In this world, ever since that wild dimensional storm hit, absolute monstrous entities have started popping up everywhere. But honestly, that's not even the craziest part of the story. While everyone else is out there grinding their butts off and risking their lives to cultivate primordial energy, our protagonist is having a laid-back life. He's got his hands on a mysterious phone device that lets him play a game and upgrade his character. And get this, when his game character levels up and gains powers, his real-life skills and abilities get a boost too. So, buckle up and get ready to watch as our guy wrecks the competition and rises to the top. All thanks to the ultimate device he's got in the palm of his hand. In this story, a dimensional storm hit the Earth almost a decade ago, which revealed the existence of gods, fairies, ghosts, monsters, angels, demons, elves, and other legendary beings. These dimensional beings were classified into 4 categories: mortals, legends, epics, and mythicals. Their abilities and destructive powers were beyond human imagination, with humans sitting at the bottom of the mortal class. However, humans could improve their standing by cultivating their primordial energy, or by hunting dimensional beings and stealing their dimensional crystals. The latter method, though, was full of risks, as the areas where these beings were found were extremely dangerous. Once the world-building bit is over, our story starts in a classroom, where this bald teacher is calling out our protagonist, Joe Wen. When our boy doesn't respond to his call, the baldy starts yelling his head off, just like any typical teacher. I mean, his frustration is pretty understandable since this idiot is taking a nap in the middle of class, leaving the teacher wondering why the old principal thought so highly of this lazy guy. The scene flashes back to when the old principal told the bald teacher that there are only 2 types of geniuses. One is our hero of this story, and the other is everyone else. Fast forward to the present, and as soon as our boy hears the bell, he suddenly bolts out of the classroom without a word. The teacher's left scratching his head, thinking maybe the principal misjudged Joe Wen's potential. Meanwhile, our boy dashes down the corridor and bursts outside into the tennis court area. Once he is alone with his phone, he reveals to us that his life has been turned upside down ever since he got this mysterious phone. And the game inside this phone is the reason he's been zoning out in class and skipping his cultivation. All he needs to do is put a drop of his blood on the phone screen to access the hidden game app. Before diving in, he frantically looks around to make sure no one's around. Then, he grabs a needle, pokes his finger, and adds another drop of blood to create a character in the game. As soon as the phone absorbs the blood, the crimson fluid starts to morph into a character, turning into an adorably chibi little avatar that Joe Wen can play with in the game. The game's big selling point is that upgrading this avatar's abilities will also upgrade our boy in real life. No need to risk life and limb for cultivation, as he can just chill and play to improve himself. He quickly finds some monsters in the game and unleashes a flurry of punches with his avatar. He obliterates one ant with his powerful blows, and the other ant also gets a fiery barrage of punches for its trouble. As dusk starts to settle, we catch up with the bald teacher again. He shares that in the Commonwealth, it's pretty rare to find a genius who can cultivate primordial energy at just 16. But he's worried because there aren't many like Joe Wen, who sticks to bitter meditation and hones his chi without any external help. Everyone at Guida High School had high hopes for our boy, believing he'd easily snag first place in the upcoming practical test. A month ago, something happened that shook the school's confidence in Joe Wen. To see what really rattled them, we rewind almost a month and find students gathered around, buzzing with shock. Someone has challenged our boy, and what's even more surprising is that it's a girl. They're calling her crazy for taking on the school's prodigy on her very first day. As the 2 contenders face off in the middle of the basketball court, our boy asks if they know each other, but the girl doesn't bother with pleasantries and just tells him to bring it on. In typical reckless fashion, my guy charges at her, only to get hit with a gut-wrenching kick that sends him crashing to the ground like yesterday's trash, with just 1 kick. The way she is standing, it's clear she didn't even break a sweat while delivering that kick. The crowd is stunned to see the result of this clash, unable to believe she took him down with a single blow. Their curiosity is piqued, and everyone is asking about who this mysterious girl is, and what her name is. The bald teacher explains that ever since Joe Wen was humiliated by that girl named An Jing, he's lost all motivation. All he does now is sleep and game, and the old man is seriously worried that if this continues, he won't have a future. But honestly, the old man might be overthinking things. In our boy's case, if he keeps gaming like this, he might become unbelievably powerful. After finally defeating some monsters, Joe Wen's avatar grabs another explosion crystal, and as he absorbs the crystal, an arcane blue energy envelops him. When the blood avatar absorbs a primordial energy crystal in the game, it actually boosts the player's real-life abilities. Plus, the game lets players see stats that aren't visible in real life. A month ago, our boy's stats were pretty low, but thanks to the game, he's seen a significant boost. If he had only cultivated bitter meditation, he worries that even with years of practice, he might not have progressed as quickly as he has with the game. His only regret is that the crystals he collects in the game can't be brought into real life. If they could, he would have sold even the low-grade ones to rack up enough cash to live comfortably for the rest of his life. As the game continues, our boy finds himself up against another ant, and this one's giving him a tough time. It's a red mutated vigor ant, which is faster and stronger than the usual ones. Joe Wen knows he can beat it with enough time, but just as he's focused on the fight, he hears footsteps approaching. It's Fang Ruoxi, a hottie in shorts, and our boy feels a surge of anxiety after seeing her around. He doesn't want her to find out what he's playing, and if his secret gets out, he's in big trouble. But abandoning this battle now isn't an option either. He then decides to ignore her completely, trying to appear as just a tech nerd absorbed in his phone. But Fang Ruoxi calls out to him, inviting him to join her team for the final practical test of the graduation exam. As he continues his game, he asks why she wants him on her team. Fang Ruoxi explains that she wants to score high in the combat test and needs strong teammates. Our boy, however, tells her he's not as strong anymore since the title of top student was taken from him a month ago. But the girl claims that he's still the only person at Guide High School she considers worthy of being her opponent. But he tries to remind her that Anjing was the strongest. But Fang Ruoxi reveals that Anjing has already transferred schools. Ju is stunned by this news, and the girl further adds that while she's not sure where Anjing came from, it's clear she's surpassed the mortal class. Her appearance and departure were so sudden that it felt like she was just here to challenge our boy. Fang Ruoxi also mentions that she initially thought Joe Wen had some sort of rivalry with Anjing, which might be why she challenged him. The boy thinks about it for a moment, but then claims that this is not possible because he has never met her before, let alone have beef with her. The girl then drops this topic and asks him once again whether he's joining her team. Joe Wen, seeing the opportunity, agrees, saying he's fine with benefiting from her skills and leadership. Fang Ruoxi decides it's settled and explains that she's already found 2 other teammates. Starting today, all team members, including our boy, will train together every afternoon. With that, she quietly leaves, and he finally defeats the red ant. He rushes to grab the dimensional energy crystal, but as soon as he does, a bunch of ants swarm him. But our boy quickly ends the game, and plans to check out the new crystal later. Suddenly he feels a sense of unease. His phone and his body start radiating a crimson energy, and he's overwhelmed by an intense feeling. It looks like the crystal might be causing this reaction. From what he knows, the Vigor Ant Crystal seems to be a primordial energy skill crystal from the legends, but he's unsure what skill it might grant. Without wasting any time, he drops a bit of blood on his phone and activates the game to see what's happening. As soon as he looks into it, he sees that he has unlocked a new primordial energy skill. Later, all 4 members of the group come together, and Fang Ruoxi introduces Joe Wen as their 4th teammate to the other 2 members. The 2 guys raise their eyebrows, noting that while they know about Joe Wen's skills, he hasn't been training for over a month, so they're unsure if he can perform at his previous level. One of the guys, who has blonde hair, mentions that their main goal is to secure first place in Guide City's college entrance combat test. He expresses concern that our boy might not be the best candidate and suggests inviting another guy named Zheng Yi instead. Well, our boy can understand their hesitation to take him in. You see, the college entrance combat test is a big deal. It can significantly impact the latter part of someone's life, affecting everything from getting into prestigious universities to job hunting, and even determining their place in society's top echelons. Plus, having strong teammates is crucial for safety, so it makes sense they'd want to ensure they have the best possible team. Rue tries to convince the group that while Zheng Yi might be a strong candidate, she still believes Joe is their best option. The blonde guy then proposes a simple test to measure their strengths if our boy does not mind. Rue curiously asks what kind of test they're talking about. The blonde guy proudly explains that since he himself is the weakest among the 3 of them, Joe Wen will spar with him. If our boy wins, he proves he's qualified to join the team. If he loses, he's out. Our boy raises a concern about the risks of combat and the potential for injury, suggesting that no one benefits from getting hurt. But the blonde guy points out that the school's strength measuring devices might give numbers, but those are meaningless. They'll settle this with a straightforward fight, and the one who concedes loses. Hearing this, Rue thinks about how Tian's combat skills stack up against Joe Wen's, and she is quite concerned for our boy. You see, our boy hasn't used any dimensional crystals to boost his cultivation, and his family is likely poor, so he might not have any key fighting skills at all. Despite her concerns, she's curious to see how he will handle the situation. Meanwhile, Joe Wen is considering using machines to gauge their strengths, but Tian scoffs, asking if he's afraid. Our boy just scratches his head, secretly worried that he might hurt them with a single punch. In the end, they decide to use the machines. Tian steps up first and punches the machine with all his might. As everyone watches in anticipation, the machine displays a strength score of 7 points. Joe Wen reflects on how the number on the machine isn't exactly the same as the values shown in the game, but they're quite close. Before he started the game, he had similar power, Tien invites our boy to take his turn with the strength measuring machine. When my guy delivers his strike, the impact creates a loud noise that echoes throughout the school. The baldy teacher, who happens to be walking down the corridor, hears the noise and wonders aloud who's using the testing machine when everyone should be resting. So, he curiously heads to the machine room, and as he opens the door quietly, he catches sight of Joe Wen and the others. He is left scratching his head if our boy is the one who just threw that punch. And yep, it's definitely him. The room goes silent as everyone watches in awe when the machine displays a strength score of 10. Even the old man, who is secretly observing, is completely stunned. The old man starts to reconsider and wonders if Joe hasn't been slacking off after all. Perhaps he's been practicing so intensely that he's only had time to nap in class. He even begins to think that the old principal's judgment about Joe might actually have been spot on. Meanwhile, Rue is puzzled and impressed by our boy's choice to use the most challenging method to deliver strength. And yet he still scores 10 points without even using any chi fighting skills. Tien is visibly agitated by this, and with his frustration boiling over, he swallows his pride and informs our boy that he's qualified. He then decides to make one last punch with what's left of his dignity. He clenches his fist, which crackles with thunder, and delivers a devastating blow to the machine. This time, the machine shows a strength score of 11. The punch leaves Tien completely exhausted, and our boy gives him a thumbs up for his effort. However, Joe appears to be curious about something. Tien tells him to snap out of it and warns him to either score higher than 11 or face the disgrace of losing. Our boy then asks his friends if the school will make him pay for any damage if he breaks the machine. Blondie confidently reassures him that he'll cover the cost if the machine gets broken. With that in mind, my guy begins to smile, and a yellow energy starts to surround his body as he prepares for his punch. Blondie is pretty sure Joe Wen is just bragging. After all, this machine is meant for serious strength testing and can go up to 20 points. Hardly anyone at the school could hit that mark. But with his power cranked up, my guy lets loose with a punch flowing with chi, and Rue is shocked to see he's using chi fighting skills. The punch is so intense that the machine starts breaking down, its circuits frying from the sheer power. Everyone watching is stunned as he takes down the machine like it's nothing. The baldy is completely baffled to see this. He is pretty sure that this machine can easily handle strength up to 20 points, and to wreck it like that, you'd need a rank 8 or 9 key fighting skill. At that moment, the baldy's bald head recalls the principal's words about Joe being the ultimate genius, and he has finally started to see why the principal made such a bold statement about our boy. Even Rue has always known our boy is strong, but seeing it in action was a real eye-opener for her. As the evening sets in, our boy takes a leisurely stroll down a quiet city path. While walking, he can't help but remember his fight with Enjing. It baffles him why someone at her legendary level would bother challenging someone still in the Mortal League. He's pretty sure he's never left Guida Province before, so he has no clue when he might have offended her. Out of the blue, his phone rings. It's his dad, asking if he'll be coming to his wedding. The son curiously asks who the lucky bride is. His playboy father quickly sends a photo of a woman with some impressive pair of hooters and asks if his son likes his future stepmother. Well, that's one way to spice up a father-son chat. Anyway, our boy asks when and where the wedding's happening, and his dad casually mentions it'll be in about a week. That's when our boy reminds his father that his college entrance exam happens to be next week, so he can't attend the wedding even though he really wants to. He then asks his dad if there's an iron cookie box in the closet room. His father, clueless as usual, says he has no idea. Joe tells him it's a square iron cookie box about 10 inches long with a cartoon bear pattern on it. His dad then explains that it's the box of bear cookies he used to eat, but that brand isn't sold anymore. He is really curious about Joe's sudden interest in that box, so he asks why he's bringing it up. Our boy reveals there's a phone inside that cookie box and asks if his dad put it there. His father asks if the phone has a white metal shell, a black screen, no keys, and is about 7 or 8 inches long. When the son confirms, his dad says it belongs to his grandpa. Our guy is totally stunned and asks how his grandpa ended up with the phone. His dad then reveals a wild story about our boy's grandpa. Basically, his grandpa worked as a carpenter during the reconstruction of ancient Guide City. They worked on a ton of old-style wooden buildings. Grandpa was there for over a year, and one night, while a few workers were burning the midnight oil, they discovered an ancient dry well on the construction site. Something was shimmering inside, and they thought they'd hit the jackpot with some kind of treasure. There was a box inside the well, and when they pulled out that old wooden box from the well, the light was seeping through the gaps, and inside the box, there was a phone. The screen was lit up at first, but it went dark as soon as they took it out. The phone had no keys or charging port, looking like it was completely dead. Everyone was pretty bummed when they found the broken phone. They figured it was just some prank and quickly moved on. So Grandpa ended up tossing it into his toolkit. His dad further adds that the phone couldn't be turned on, and when he was younger, he even tried to sell it at a repair shop to get some cigarettes. The shop owner said it was worthless, so he just dumped it into that cookie box. Now he's wondering if Joe wants to sell it too. Inside, Joe's pretty relieved his dad never managed to sell it. Otherwise, he'd never have gotten his hands on this bad boy. He asks his dad if the phone was ever turned on. His dad says definitely not and mentions it's been sitting unused for decades. His dad wraps up the call, saying he's got other stuff to do. He's already given the wedding info, so it's up to Joe if he wants to come or not. Once the call wraps up, Joe reflects on how his real combat test will be held in ancient Guide City. He decides it might be worth checking out the old well for any clues or leads. He heads back home and starts reworking his game plan. Days pass, and he falls into a routine, napping through class and snoozing under a tree while everyone else trains, all the while gaming away. Several days later, in the school corridor, two students are sprinting down the hall. A guy in glasses crashes into another guy dressed like he's from some aristocratic society. The glasses guy hits the ground hard from the impact, but the blonde guy barely flinches. He just stands there, giving off a weirdly creepy vibe. The blondie begins to walk away with his entourage, and the people behind whisper among themselves about how intimidating this guy looks. The next scene takes us outside, where we meet Tien again. He announces he's quitting the group because a friend has already invited him to another team. With that, he walks off, leaving our boy wondering if Roxy has a backup plan since the test is right around the corner, and finding a new teammate now is nearly impossible. He calls out to his other teammate, Li Ju, and asks if he knows Tien left the team. Li Ju drops another bomb. He can't team up with our boy either, and asks not to be questioned about why he's quitting. Finally, we meet Roxy, who looks sad and dejected. It's clear why she's upset. Her team's numbers have dwindled. When she spots our boy, she quickly apologizes, but he tells her not to stress. He reveals that he should be the one apologizing because he's the reason everyone is leaving. Apparently there are people out there gunning for him, which is why his teammates left the group. She then points out that she has no clue who our boy has offended, but she's sure that whoever it is holds a lot of power, so he should be careful. He agrees and they part ways. His mind is racing about the upcoming test, and he's stressed about finding trustworthy teammates in time. Heck, even his most trusted friend Roxy does not want to team up with him anymore, given all the danger he is attracting. As he walks away, the bald teacher calls out to him. Once Joe meets with him, the teacher reveals that Inspector Ang is from the military, and his full name is Ang Tianzuo. He asks if Joe knows him, and our boy confirms he doesn't. The old man finds it odd because if Joe doesn't know him, why would such a high-ranking military officer criticize a high school student by name during his inspection in Guide City? Our boy then asks who this man really is, so the bald teacher breaks it down. The Earth Federation is divided into 4 regions: East, South, West, and North. Inspector Ang is young but comes from a famous family. At just over 20, he's already a senior officer in the East Region military, making him a remarkable figure. The boy then asks if Inspector Ang is trying to target him. The teacher says he can't be sure, but Ang Tianzuo did mention that our boy wasn't a good student, and everyone agreed with him, especially those wanting to please Inspector Ang. Our guy gets furious and asks if a senior officer like Ang doesn't realize how his words could ruin a high school student's life. He then asks if Ang is related to An Jing, the woman he fought a month ago. The baldy says there's a chance, but they shouldn't jump to conclusions. Right now, the most important thing is to find our boy a team so he can sign up for the test. The deadline is the day after tomorrow, so there's no time to lose. His teammates can't be just any ordinary students. The old man reveals that there's a student named Li Xuan in their school. If this student accepts our boy and his team, Baldy believes no one will make things difficult for him. However, there's a condition. Our boy has to do his best to help Li Xuan get a good score, and Li Xuan must have the highest score among the 4 team members. The boy asks if the old man is implying he should give his points to this newcomer, to which the old man agrees, stating that this is his only chance to participate in the match. The boy agrees to the terms and tells the old man to contact Li Xuan for him. After that meeting, Joe then calls his father, asking about Inspector Ang Tianzuo and if he knows him. That's when his father drops a bombshell. Ang Tianzuo is actually our boy's brother. This news hits our boy like a thunderbolt out of the blue. His father explains that Tianzuo is the son of his stepmother. Once his father marries her, Tianzuo will be officially his brother. And as if that wasn't enough, his father also reveals that our boy has a sister named An Jing. It suddenly clicked to our boy why that girl, An Jing, appeared out of nowhere and challenged him in front of the entire school. It was probably just to tarnish his reputation. He quickly asks his dad if those two actually like their new father. In response, the dad claims that they both respect him a lot. After ending the call, the only thing on Joe's mind is why these siblings are trying to mess with him. He wonders if they disapprove of the marriage between his father and their mother. He reflects on how Tianzuo flaunted his authority, tried to block him from joining the exam, and An Jing defeated him with a single hit, all because he's just way too weak to stand against them. Nonetheless, he heads back to his messy, stinky apartment and dives into his game, figuring leveling up is the best way to tackle these problems. After taking down a mutated ant, he gets a special drop, a symbiotic egg. Joe gets excited to see this, because he knows it's rare for someone at the mortal level to get a symbiotic pet, since most people get theirs at the legendary level. As soon as his blood avatar tries to grab the egg, it starts to crack and hits him right in the chest. Suddenly a voice echoes in his head, calling him master, and pledging loyalty, even saying it would die for him. He feels this intense pain coursing through him, and he quickly sits back on his bed with his head aching like hell. But then, he notices a new tattoo on his hand. And once he checks his mobile phone, he sees he's now got a pet, known as a mutated immense strength ant. This pet can also be used in its symbiotic form as a fist weapon. Excitedly, he covers the windows with curtains for some privacy, and decides to summon his new pet, though he's not quite sure how to go about it. He starts thinking about his pet, and as he concentrates, his hand begins to gather energy. A glove-like weapon starts to form above his hand. It turns out this glove is the symbiotic form of his pet, and is said to enhance the user's abilities. He then decides to summon the mutated immense strength ant itself. As the glove dissolves into mist, the crimson mist begins to shape into the ant. It materializes into a furious but surprisingly cute creature. Our boy is somewhat scared to see this, and not gonna lie, this pet is much larger than I had expected it to be. In any case, our boy decides he'll try riding it some other time, maybe once he's outside. The next day arrives, and we see the bald teacher taking our boy to meet Li Xuan. The old man reveals that Li Xuan is somewhat pretentious, but assures him that he's not a bad guy. Since they're only working with him for the test, there's nothing to worry about. Their car zooms down the highway, eventually reaching a place called the Honorable Royal Health Club. Inside, a servant greets the old man, who tells her they're looking for the second son of the Li family. Hearing this, the servant quickly shows them the way inside. As they enter, it becomes clear the old man wasn't kidding about Li Xuan being pretentious. The place is majestic, and the man in question is surrounded by a bunch of girls, looking like a hip-hop rapper who thinks he's on top of the world after earning a few $100,000. Xuan quickly tells Baldy to have a seat and a drink, but the old man refuses and gets straight to the point. He introduces our boy right away, assuring Xuan that this kid is very capable and can easily help him achieve a good score in the exam. Xuan waves off the old man's pitch, saying he trusts Baldy and will take our boy as his teammate for his sake. With that settled, the old man decides to leave, telling both of them to discuss the test details. Before leaving, the old man turns to our boy and tells him to get familiar with Li Xuan and his team because the test is right around the corner. With that, the old man leaves, and Xuan turns to Joe, claiming he's heard about him and that he's apparently the best genius in Guida High School. Our boy just shrugs it off as a rumor and tells him not to take it seriously. Li Xuan agrees and points out that it's impossible to have geniuses in a small province like this one. He then reminds our boy that if he were a genius, he wouldn't have been defeated by Anjing with one move. He then tells Joe that he doesn't have to participate in any teamwork training. All he needs to do is follow commands and not cause any trouble. He then offers Joe a challenge. If he can finish an entire bottle of alcohol in one go, he'll let Joe choose any girl he desires from the club. Joe just keeps his eyes glued to his mobile, barely looking up, and says he doesn't drink. It seems this playboy isn't too thrilled with Joe's attitude and starts wondering if Baldy, who begged him to take on this good-for-nothing dude, was worth it. To mess with Joe, Li Xuan tells one of the girls to entertain our boy. The girl calls Xuan a naughty boy for being so mischievous, then starts hovering around Joe. She tries to grab his attention with her big hooters and somewhat average looks, but Joe doesn't take his eyes off his device. As she gets physical and tries to touch him, it becomes clear that our boy is way too busy to deal with this silver-winged mosquito monster. He's doing his best to stay focused, but the woman is persistent and starts to get on his nerves. As she bothers him and forces him to look at her, his game avatar finds itself in trouble. Just before he's about to lose the game, he flings the annoying woman away like a true Gaiga Chad and quickly maneuvers his avatar out of danger. The playboy nearly chokes on his drink, stunned that our boy literally tossed the woman aside just to save his game. Everyone bursts into laughter at the absurdity of it all. It looks like our boy has finally lost his game and isn't feeling too great about it. On the other hand, it seems like Xuan is starting to take a liking to our boy. As night falls, the room is littered with empty bottles and shot glasses. Li Xuan is sound asleep in his bed with his girl, but as we take a closer look, it looks like he is still awake. Meanwhile, Joe is still deeply engrossed in his game, determined to beat the silver-winged mosquito. Despite his efforts, he keeps losing to the pesky bug, and his avatar keeps losing its head to the monster. After playing through the night, all his attempts have ended in failure. The mosquito isn't quite at the legendary level, so it should be possible to take it down. Joe thinks that if he can land a rank 9 power punch, he could really hurt it. But since the punch takes forever to execute, he's wondering if he can mix it with some high-speed move. Since his game character is based on him, Joe figures that if he improves his real-life power punch, the game character will sync up with those gains. He starts practicing his punch, hoping to boost his in-game performance. As Joe trains, Li Xuan sneaks a curious look at him, intrigued by his relentless dedication. He has no clue what our boy is practicing, and the whole 1-inch punch thing sounds like gibberish to him. He shrugs it off, thinking he might have some special skills, but seeing nothing impressive about his moves, he decides to go back to sleep. The college entrance exam finally arrives, and our boy diligently fills out his answer sheet, and we see Li Xuan also taking the exam. Once the exam is over and everyone spills out, it's clear that it was a pretty grueling exam, as everyone looks pretty dejected. A few days later, a bus full of students zooms down the highway, heading towards the ancient Guida city. Decades ago, when the dimensional storm hit, a dimensional crack opened up in the city, transforming it into a realm with all sorts of mutated animals and plants. Troops are stationed in the city, and no one is allowed to enter without a pass. And the real combat test is about to begin in this creepy, transformed city. Once the bus stops and the students get out, Joe notices a lot of soldiers closely watching everything. While he waits for his team members, he looks around and reads a large sign that says, Guida Province. Right next to the sign, there's a small palm-like emblem embedded in the wall that piques his curiosity. Suddenly his phone rings. He's pretty sure it's his dad calling, so he pulls out his phone. To his surprise, it's the mysterious phone he uses to play the game. This phone has never made or received calls before and has never vibrated, so it's strange that it's ringing now. What is even more surprising is that there's a camera app activated. He opens the app but isn't sure what to do with it. Wondering if he's supposed to take selfies, he decided to take pictures of the beautiful landscape before him. The camera on the mysterious phone isn't cooperating, and as he fumbles with it, he accidentally points it towards the palm-like emblem near the Guida Province sign. The phone instantly detects the emblem and, when he snaps a photo, a new app appears on the screen. Well, it seems like it's an app for entering a dungeon in the game. Since he is free for now, he decides to give it a go. And after dropping a bit of blood, his game avatar materializes, and he finds himself navigating through what seems like the Guida city in the game. As he moves forward, he spots a creature from another universe, an adorable skeleton soldier. The little guy charges at him with a big weapon, and our boy is in for an unexpected battle. Joe dodges the skeleton soldier's clumsy attacks with ease, and he's barely breaking a sweat. The skeleton's neither quick nor strong, making it a breeze compared to the ants he usually deals with. His avatar then balls up its fist, and shatters the poor zombie into pieces with its devastating punch. The skeleton's crystal drops quickly, and Joe is pleasantly surprised to find a skill crystal right after his very first kill. He hits the absorb button, and the crystal's power starts flowing into him. It's not as painful as he'd expected, much smoother than his previous experiences with skill absorption. The system then pops up, announcing that he's acquired the Skeleton Palm skill, with a key consumption of just 1 point. Looks like Joe's off to a solid start. But he does not seem too thrilled though, because he remembers that skeleton soldiers are mostly low level and their skills are basic, consuming minimal chi. Still, he decides to push on and see what his new skill can really do. He quickly summons his mutated immense strength ant with a burst of light and hops onto its back. The ant charges through the ancient city, its speed impressive as it plows deeper into the area. And shortly after, he encounters more skeleton zombies. He slices through them effortlessly, treating them like mere practice dummies. He is sure that each kill is going to rack up more crystals, so he is enjoying the thrill of the hunt. After a while, our boy's excitement dwindles as he realizes he hasn't gained anything, despite having taken down a ton of skeleton soldiers. As he ventures further into the dungeon, he encounters something unexpected. A bunch of little skeleton zombies guarding the final boss. A much larger skeleton seated atop a horse. The skeleton knight wastes no time, moving with incredible speed and landing a solid hit that pierces through Joe's avatar, killing him instantly. When the game ends, he looks back at the emblem near the signboard and is certain that beyond that door, Guida Province holds many more mysteries. Suddenly, someone appears behind him. As soon as he turns around, he sees his stepsister, who, as usual, doesn't seem particularly thrilled to see him. Shortly after, we see Joe holding a pen drive, and we are not sure how he got this little thing. The scene then flashes back to when his stepsister had swung her fist at him, stopping just before his face. She told him that their father had asked her to deliver something to him and quickly handed over the pen drive. As she leaves, she wonders aloud how their father is wasting his efforts on someone like Joe, calling him a loser and saying he'll never be a true member of the Yang family, because no one in her family is as useless and weak as he is. Our boy is kinda puzzled about when he became a member of her family. Just as he's lost in thought, he hears a call from Xuan. As he turns around, he sees Xuan finally arriving with the other 2 team members. My guy is dressed so casually that he looks like he's here for a beach party rather than a serious exam. The playboy then puts a hand on Joe's shoulder and tells him not to worry about a thing, as his goons will handle everything. The 2 lackeys quickly agree, with one of them even boasting that he could single-handedly take down all of Guida province for his boss. Xuan doesn't seem too impressed with his lackey's overconfidence. The other one, wearing a black hat, steps forward and promises that they'll do their best and nothing will go wrong. Seeing this, Joe quickly realizes that Xuan is intentionally keeping himself and our boy out of the action, planning to use these two goons as pawns. The time for the test finally arrives, and a soldier tells everyone to report to the invigilator. That's when we catch sight of Ruoxi, and our boy spots her too. He flashes a pleasant smile and gives her a thumbs up, which seems to relieve her a bit, seeing that Joe has finally managed to join a team. The city gates begin to crack open, emitting a bright blue energy that forms some kind of portal. A guy in glasses, probably the invigilator, steps up and explains the rules. Points will be calculated based on the number of crystals collected by killing skeleton soldiers, and the number of crystals will also determine their ranking. With that, he tells everyone to step forward and enter the gate. Joe confidently walks toward the portal, and as soon as he steps through, he finds himself on the other side along with other students, ready to take on whatever challenges come his way. Skeleton monsters start popping up, and the students dive at them like they're the last roll of toilet paper in a Walmart during a sale. The skeletons clatter forward, their bones making hilarious rattling noises. Black Hat Dude takes down a skeleton with a single swing, slicing through its neck like it's made of butter. Meanwhile, overconfident guy grabs another skeleton's hand and gives it a brutal knee smash, turning it into bone confetti. Well, it seems like our boy doesn't need to worry about anything, since these guys are actually quite a powerhouse team. He is happy that this gives him the perfect excuse to check something on his phone he's been curious about for a while. Xuan, however, is super confused. He's watching Joe play on his phone and starts to wonder if this guy is actually a genius or if it's just a load of hot air. Meanwhile, whatever Joe was trying to confirm, his hunch was right on the money. Apparently, he was looking into the layout of the game, and not just the city gate, even the layout of the buildings is identical to the dungeon in the game. This makes him curious if every dungeon is based on a real place inside the game. As soon as he realizes this, his face goes pale as if he's about to crap his pants. If this real-world setting is actually similar to the game, then the Skeleton Knight must exist as well. But thankfully, according to the area he explored in the game, they are still far from the Skeleton Knight. As long as they stay in the testing area, they won't encounter that monstrosity again. After a bit, our group regroups and starts planning to head deeper into the city. But our boy is pretty hesitant to push further, and we already know the reason behind his hesitation. The lackeys argue that most of the skeleton soldiers in this part of the city have been cleared out, and the rate of new ones popping up has slowed. If they want to rack up those high scores, they've got no choice but to explore further. Joe tries to make them see that leaving the testing area could get seriously risky, but Xuan just shrugs and states that if our boy is scared, he can stay behind. The lackeys also agree, saying going deeper is their only real shot at scoring big. So, Xuan tells Joe to stick with them and promises that even if things get hairy, his lackeys will have his back. Seems like Joe's in a bit of a pickle because he can't exactly spill the beans about the big bad monster waiting around the corner. So, he tucks his phone away and decides to stick with the team for now. He is also thinking of fighting that skeleton knight in the game in order to figure out the strategy to defeat it. It's his only shot at making sure both he and Li Xuan make it out of this mess alive. As the two lackeys charge ahead, they're smacking down skeletons left and right with their flashy powers. Meanwhile, Joe and Xuan are just casually strolling along, with Joe completely absorbed in his game. He's getting his virtual behind handed to him by that pesky skeleton king over and over. After another defeat, Joe faces the harsh reality, which is that dodging or jumping doesn't help, because that knight's sword always finds its mark and is way scarier than the silver-winged mosquito. But then he remembers that the Skeleton King isn't super agile all the time, and it only speeds up when it's charging at him. He is pretty sure that the monster must be using Chi fighting skill to pull this high-speed move. He is not sure how to deal with this, and if it continues like this, they are all gonna get wiped out. But suddenly, he notices something interesting. The dead monster has dropped a large dimensional crystal. One of the lackeys quickly grabs the crystal and rushes to show it to their master. The lackey hands over the crystal to the master, and our boy reminds Xuan that they've gathered enough points and should make a hasty exit. However, the lackey disagrees, saying there's no need to rush since there's still plenty of time before the exam ends. The black hat guy agrees, adding that they should rack up some extra points to ensure they come out on top. The playboy checks his phone and notes that there are no reports of creatures above the legendary level nearby, so it should be safe to go further. But our boy grabs his hand and asks if he believes in instincts. Xuan looks at him, confused, and asks what he's talking about. Joe explains that he always gets a terrible feeling when danger is near, and it has never been a false alarm. Right now, he's experiencing an overwhelming sense of unease about the danger ahead. Of course, one of the goons doesn't take Joe's warning seriously. He lashes out at him, reminding him that he should consider himself lucky to be accepted by his master, and he better not drag everyone down just because of some weird gut feeling. Joe snaps back, pointing out that Guida province is a small place and no students dare to leave the testing area. Besides, they've already earned so many points that they'll maintain their advantage as long as they keep hunting in the testing area, so there's no need to venture into the unknown. It seems Joe's words strike a chord with Xuan, forcing him to admit that our boy has a point. But suddenly, the black hat guy pulls out a sharp dagger and thrusts it right into Xuan's back. After delivering that cowardly blow, this bastard grins like a cat who just caught a mouse, enjoying his little act of treachery. The blonde lackey tries to step in to protect his master, but ends up getting taken down by the black hat guy too. With a menacing look in his eyes, the black hat guy tells his fallen comrades to just die like dogs. The playboy admits he didn't see that coming, and in an instant his wound heals completely, and he looks at the treacherous black hat guy, asking if he was sent by his brother. The black hat is surprised to see that a playboy like Xuan knows the chi spell, known as Invincible Constitution. Here is the explanation of this ki spell thing. You see, ki spells are different from ki fighting skills or dimensional crystals. They're specific techniques created by humans, each with its own cultivation limits. Invincible Constitution is one of the rare spells that can raise a person's maximum level straight to the epic tier. However, it's said that only virgins can practice this spell, and once they lose their virginity, they must start over from square one. Our boy is skeptical about Xuan practicing this spell, considering he is always surrounded by peachy cheeks to smash. The lackey on the ground speaks up, disappointed that his friend helped Li Mobai work against Xuan. Our playboy also expresses his disappointment, saying he never wanted to compete with his brother for power, so he can't understand why his brother wants him to die. The black hat guy makes a sassy comment that Xuan should blame himself for the fate he's about to face. With that, the black hat guy begins to gather energy into his dagger and throws a green energy slash at our playboy. However, the guy sidesteps the attack with such flair that it's almost unbelievable. Our boy and the other lackey are stunned when they spot a giant snake, known as the explosive scale snake. It becomes clear that the black hat guy is not an ordinary opponent, as no one could summon a legendary level creature like this. Meanwhile, Xuan just stands there like he couldn't care less. He casually explains that legendary level pets can be hatched if someone at that level is willing to pay a hefty price to transfer the creature's symbiotic egg. The scrawny trader looks impressed by all the knowledge our playboy has been dropping, but he quickly picks up his momentum and lunges at Xuan with a dagger. Xuan, however, just grabs the dagger with his bare hands, like it's no big deal. The black hat guy's jaw drops at the sight, because he's clearly not ready for this level of badassery. Our playboy's calm face turns into something straight out of a dark fantasy. With a simple flick, he unleashes a massive energy explosion, sending the scrawny guy skidding across the ground. It's clear now that Xuan's not just some pretty face. He's packing serious heat with his legendary level creature. As he walks forward, crackling with dark energy and looking like he stepped out of a Dark Souls game, the scene is set for an epic showdown. He gives off terrifying vibes to the black hat, who quickly starts retreating like his life depends on it, which it kinda does. But Xuan isn't about to let him off easy. He leaps ahead and starts chasing that guy down. Meanwhile, Joe is also trying to keep up, but they're just way too fast, and he eventually loses sight of them. The lackey behind tells Joe to keep chasing because he's gotta help Xuan at all costs. Joe replies, "Yeah, you go ahead, I'll catch up." The blonde lackey gets all huffy, calls Joe a coward, and keeps marching forward, searching for his boss. Joe knows that even if he did chase after them, he wouldn't be much help. Both Xuan and Jiang Ho have legendary level creatures, which he definitely doesn't have. Right now, his main concern is the Skeleton Knight, and he's pretty sure it'll be game over if they bump into that monster. So, the only way to help Li Xuan is to find a way to handle this Skeleton Knight. Joe pinches his thumb again, drops a bit of blood, and his avatar finally comes back. He's determined to face off against this knight and figure out a way to deal with it in real life. The Skeleton Knight quickly starts charging at him on its horse, and that's when Joe realizes that running is useless. Once that knight begins its charge, it's next to impossible to dodge the attack. So, he quickly leaps forward toward the knight, catching this empty-headed monster off guard. The knight seems pissed and starts throwing his spear-like weapon around, trying to hit Joe. But our guy isn't just standing around like a sitting duck. He keeps moving, running circles around the knight who's perched on his horse, desperately trying to land a hit. As the action intensifies, Joe keeps dodging left and right. That's when the Skeleton Knight uses its trump card and lands a solid hit right into the avatar's chest. The reason he got hit is that he got distracted by the commotion nearby, and he's pretty sure Xuan has finally encountered the Skeleton King. He puts his phone back into his pocket and recalls his previous experience with the knight. He remembers that in the previous game, the Skeleton Knight was powerful, but had a blind spot that could be attacked near his skeleton horse. As long as they take full advantage of it, they'll make it out alive for sure. As he makes his way through, he spots rubble, a clear sign that the fighters must be nearby. After a little walk, he finally finds them. He quickly catches up and asks his friends if they're alright. The armored playboy responds that saying they're alright would be an overstatement because this skeleton monster is on a whole other level. Zhu is absolutely terrified to see the skeleton knight in person. It looks way scarier than the one he saw in the game. He also notices that the black hat is standing behind the skeleton knight. He is blown away to see that the skeleton is not attacking the black hat. But then, he notices the armor the black hat is wearing, which must be why the skeleton knight is ignoring him completely. By the way, this black hat dude is Zhang Hao, and Joe finds it really concerning that Xuan's brother must be incredibly rich to afford to equip this black hat dude with so many legendary level creatures. The knight quickly recognizes our party as a threat and starts charging at them on his horse, but the playboy jumps in and tells everyone to stand back, quickly raising his shield before the skeleton can strike. When their attacks clash, there's an explosion of power that sends shockwaves so intense that the guy standing next to Joe gets flung like a mosquito, hitting the floor with a resounding thud. He starts coughing violently, but insists he's fine, despite the obvious pain. As the dust settles, we see the Skeleton King and Playboy locked in a deadlock. That's when the Playboy notices a sneaky attack coming his way, and it's the same explosive snake from Jiang Hao. But Xuan quickly raises his shield, stopping the monster dead in its tracks. Jiang Hao retracts his snake and starts grinning maniacally, saying he's excited to see how Xuan will handle both threats at once. While the Skeleton Knight continues trying to take down Playboy, this cocky goon charges at him as well, making things even worse for Xuan. His armor is starting to crack under the relentless attacks, and it's looking like he's having a really rough time. Joe then asks the Playboy how long it will take him to defeat Jiang if he distracts the Skeleton King for the time being. In response, Xuan proudly claims that it won't take him more than 2 minutes, and he is totally sure of himself. On the other hand, the lackey just laughs inwardly. He's convinced that Joe is just a mortal level, so there's no way he can survive the Skeleton Knight's attacks. If Joe tries to take him on, it's pretty much a death wish. But well, our guy makes a dramatic show of taking off his coat, striking a clear stance, and then leaps right behind the Skeleton King. He casually provokes the skeleton, inviting him to a fight. The empty head falls for the bait and quickly stands in front of our boy. Without wasting any time, he lunges at him, but our guy sidesteps the first attack. He notices that the attack is pretty similar to what he faced in the game. However, as the horse takes another step, its massive leg shatters the ground on impact. Our guy quickly rolls to avoid a direct hit and starts dashing around like a madman to stay out of harm's way. Joe realizes that unlike the Skeleton Knight in the game, this one in real life is way more agile while attacking. Their back and forth continues, and as the knight keeps trying to tag him, our guy keeps dodging left and right, staying just out of reach. He then balls up his fist and lands a solid punch right into the horse's ribs. But it's clear that his punch is about as effective as a mosquito bite on an elephant. The Skeleton King seems to be having a good time poking at this weakling, while our boy tries to figure out if the skeleton has any weak spots. Meanwhile, the other blondie finally gets to his feet, feeling pretty pathetic because our guy has managed to stall the Skeleton Knight even without a symbiotic pet. Even the black hat dude is totally baffled to see that our boy can keep up with this monster quite easily. Just then, Xuan reminds this black hat that it's unwise to let oneself get distracted. He delivers a devastating blow right to the bastard's face, which sends him flying like a rag doll. Surprisingly enough, the dude manages to regain its footing and challenges Xuan, making it clear that he won't back down unless he's killed or he's taken out his opponent. The back and forth of their blows continues once again, and our playboy is pretty okay if this black hat dude really desperately wants to get killed. Seems like the black hat has finally been overwhelmed, and that last attack by our armored hero finishes the fight, leaving this shithead coughing up blood, and his symbiotic pet also begins to shatter. But well, this dude appears to be really stubborn, and he quickly gets back on his knees and uses his other snake pet to distract Xuan once again. Once the playboy is distracted, this black hat scumbag tries to ambush our boy from behind. At the same time, the skeleton also takes a swing at our boy, but my guy quickly ducks down like a ninja on cocaine and lets those attacks go above his head. Then, Joe balls up his fist and smashes down Black Hat's symbiotic pet with just one powerful punch. It seems like my guy is using his own symbiotic pet as a glove, and as soon as Black Hat loses his symbiotic pet, the Skeleton Knight quickly thrusts its spear right into the Black Hat's chest. The snake also starts crying in pain, now reduced from a mighty animal to a little gecko. That's when the armored guy steps on the funky, stinky gecko and ends its life altogether. Once that danger is resolved, the Skeleton King begins to transform, finally unleashing its full power. As the monster exudes this menacing aura, it quickly launches an attack at our boy. The speed of the skeleton's attack is so fast that my guy has no way to dodge it in time and just decides to take it head on. But that's when Li Xuan steps in, quickly deflecting the attack. Well, it seems like the attack was so powerful that Xuan ends up taking the brunt of it, and his armor starts to shatter like fragile glass. Seeing this, our boy starts losing his crap, realizing that even the armored guy is finding himself on the edge. On the other hand, the Skeleton King prepares to attack them once again, and both of them quickly start running. That is when the Playboy comes up with a plan. Our boy will be responsible for dealing a death blow to the skeleton, and the armored guy himself decides to distract the skeleton. As soon as the Skeleton King launches its attack, the armored fella swoops in and quickly blocks it. While he's busy dealing with the Skeleton King, our boy finds an opening, appears right behind the empty head, and balls up his fist, delivering a devastating blow, which starts burning the skeleton fella and rattles the entire area. Just as the dust settles, the Skeleton Knight stands as menacingly as before, leaving our boy surprised to see that this dude didn't even flinch. The skeleton quickly tries to strike our boy, but my guy leaps out of harm's way like dodging these attacks is second nature. The armored guy once again blocks the knight's strike head-on. My guy then unleashes a fiery barrage of punches that start burning the Skeleton King. The punches are so fast that they create a giant explosion after landing. The knight guy is absolutely boggled that they delivered so many attacks, but this guy is still unfazed. But in the settling haze, we see that the knight is pretty pissed. Our boy also notices a scar on the skeleton's face. As we take a closer look, we see there's indeed a crack in that thick-skulled head. The armored guy quickly figures out what needs to be done, so he flings our boy into the sky, while he himself distracts the Skeleton King with a deadly punch. As the Skeleton King looks up, all it can see is Joe coming down fast. The skeleton tries to swing its sword, but Xuan pushes himself to the limit, pinning the sword to the ground. With the Skeleton King unable to defend, Joe crashes down, delivering a devastating punch right to the top of its skull. The punch is so powerful that the knight's skull finally cracks, causing a massive explosion. Our boy flashes a satisfied grin as the Skeleton King disintegrates into a pile of rubble, leaving behind a crystal, which is a clear sign of victory. Our boy doesn't waste any time and squats down to grab the crystal, but it turns out it's not a crystal at all. It's a symbiotic egg. Well, that's just even better. Nevertheless, Li Xuan just starts walking off as his armor fades away, telling our boy he can keep the egg for himself. He grabs his hoodie, puts it on, and reminds Joe that if it weren't for him, they'd already be dead. So, it's a thank you gift for all of Joe's efforts. But then, he also reminds our boy that his level is too low for hatching a legendary level creature. So he better not hatch the Skeleton Knight's symbiotic egg rashly. The boy nods, and that's when Xuan spots his gauntlet and asks how he managed to get his symbiotic pet. The Playboy is suspicious because only with the invincible constitution could someone handle a legendary level creature like the Black Armor Soldier. He wonders if Joe might actually be at a legendary level. Joe quickly sets him straight, saying he's just at the mortal level. But this revelation just shocks Xuan even more, because apparently, creatures at the legendary level are more powerful, and forming a symbiotic egg is harder with weaker creatures. But since mortal level symbiotic eggs are rarer than legendary ones, Xuan's feeling pretty jealous of Joe's rare mortal level pet. Joe then worries about whether anyone saw the dead black hat guy. The Playboy just shrugs it off, saying the guy had it coming and reassures Joe he'll take care of it. But our boy still remains kinda tense, so the Playboy gives him a reassuring pat on the shoulder and tells him to relax. He promises that once they get out of here, Joe can apply to whatever college he wants, and he guarantees to help him with that. They both walk out of the portal with their injured companion, and Xuan quickly fills the instructor in on what happened inside the gate. Once everything is settled, Xuan decides to leave, and Joe exchanges last goodbyes. While the Playboy zooms out in his private car, Joe takes the bus back to the city. When the bus arrives, he steps outside, feeling really cold and a bit anemic, probably due to losing too much blood during the game. He decides to help himself with some iron-rich food. As Joe walks down the street, he accidentally kicks a person on the ground who's smeared in blood. Initially, he's shocked, thinking he's found a dead body, but the mysterious man quickly sits up and reassures Joe that he's still alive, just dealing with some nagging pain. Joe starts to walk away, but the old-looking guy invites him for a quick chat since they've crossed paths. Our boy isn't much of a talker, but the old man insists on asking a few questions. Even though our boy has no clue what they are going to talk about, he agrees to stick around nonetheless. The conversation starts off unexpectedly when the old man asks if Joe likes women with big breasts. Chu is startled by the question, but after a moment of imagining both flat-chested and big-breasted women, he decides he prefers the former. The old guy bursts into laughter, saying he shares the same preference. He goes on to explain that women with smaller breasts are better, and that only those who are stupid would prefer larger breasts. Joe awkwardly starts imagining how a woman with large breasts would have a hard time controlling them during a fight, especially if the jiggling physics is turned up to the max. The perverted old guy then asks another unexpected question. Does our boy prefer cuddly and gentle women, or short-tempered and sassy ones? Chu isn't sure what to say, and he just wants to go home. So, to finish the conversation right here, he decides to pick the most wrong answer, and reluctantly says he prefers short-tempered and sassy ladies. The old man goes quiet for a moment, but then his eyes sparkle with admiration as he agrees that he loves sassy women as well. He explains that such women are interesting and cute, and that girls with gentle personalities aren't much fun. He also points out how he didn't expect our boy to have such discerning taste at a young age. My guy facepalms himself, thinking about his stepsister who had brutally kicked him around, so he does not get why anyone would like a girl with no sympathy. The old man, however, happily states that it's rare to meet someone with such good taste like Joe. Joe then asks where the old man lives, hoping to walk him home. But this pervert man doesn't bother to respond to our boy's query, and instead mentions that Joe can't hit on girls unless he's healthy. Since Joe is low on energy, his good taste won't get him very far. The old man proceeds to give Joe a small notebook and tells him it contains a chi spell he can practice. Our boy is shocked to hear this, and the old man explains that the spell will make any woman obedient, no matter how difficult she is. So he better take this technique and practice it to its fullest. Joe feels reluctant and mentions he's already practiced other QE spells, so he does not need this one. But the old man highlights that while this true demonic record is not a top key spell, it is still more powerful than the bitter meditation. Our boy is shocked to realize that the old man already knows that he has practiced bitter meditation, so he curiously asks how in the hell this crummy stranger knew he had practiced bitter meditation. The old man explains that although Joe currently looks quite pale, he is built solid and taut, which can only be achieved through bitter meditation. He can tell Joe hasn't been practicing it for long and advises him to stop to avoid ruining himself. Instead, he suggests our boy to practice the true demonic records, claiming it's 100 times better than bitter meditation, but then quickly amends his claim to say it's actually 1,000 times better, laughing maniacally. Joe has no idea what to do, so he simply thanks the old man and says he doesn't want to accept such a precious gift from a stranger. In his mind, Joe is also reluctant because he has never heard of a key fighting skill called true demonic records, so he decides to leave, not wanting to get trapped by a shabby old coot. As our guy begins to walk away, the old man sits quietly. With a tone filled with malice, he tells Joe to stop. With that command to stop, our boy's next step trembles as he finds himself unable to move forward. His face goes pale, and suddenly, he is dragged back to the same spot he was standing before. The old man, who introduces himself as Jin Daoxian, states that he does not like hearing no as an answer, and that no one who has said it has lived afterwards. The name Jin Daoxian quickly clicks in our boy's mind, and his eyes widened in disbelief. He remembers it's a name recorded in history books, born in the most chaotic time when dimensional storms befell Earth. Jin Daoxian is known as the most ruthless and terrifying man in human history, the devil who drowned the Federation in blood and killed 27 people who were at the epic level, one after another. The old man then asks Joe if he has changed his mind or still wants to refuse the true demonic records. In response, our boy quickly says he will absolutely take it. The old man finds it odd that he agreed to take them so easily and curiously asks if he is bluffing or actually wants it, since our boy had already said before that he would never learn the true demonic records. While my guy does not say it out loud, he admits to himself that he has no intention of learning them. He knows that if he did, he would end up being wanted by the Federation just like this old coot. Jin then decides not to give the true demonic records to Joe, believing that even if he did, Joe wouldn't practice it. Jin rummages through his coat and turns to our boy once again, telling him that he has another key spell that is actually really fun. He pulls out another short notebook and asks him if he would like to practice it. Joe looks sheepishly at the notebook and does not protest like before. The pervert then forcefully puts the notes into Joe's hands and warns him not to refuse this time, or else there might be severe consequences. With that, the old man Jin begins to leave and vanishes into the bustling streets of the city, leaving our boy alone with a lot of questions. As he is standing there, he wonders if he's still being watched by that man. He looks at the notebook in his hand and wonders how he ended up taking it with him. Just then, he begins to sneeze and quickly starts running toward home. As he walks, he spots a few officers talking among themselves. One asks if the reaction was detected around this area, and a woman with a red head agrees. The officer tells her to search around here and stay in touch. Our boy looks at them and notices their badges. It doesn't take him long to recognize that these people are from the Federation. He suspects they might be looking for Jin Daoxian, whom he met just a while ago. But he just keeps walking, thinking it doesn't have anything to do with him, so he doesn't care. Once he's back home, the first thing he does is make sure to take a bath. As he soaks, he reflects on how wacky today has been. First, Xuan got ambushed by his own friend, and then, on his way back home, Joe coincidentally came across the legendary devil Jin Daoxian. All he wanted was to get cozy in his room and play his game to the fullest. He then looks at the chi spell notes that Jin gave him and wonders if they will be of any help. Nonetheless, he falls into his bed for some good sleep. Just as his mind drifts into the realm of dreams, he begins to see monsters surrounding him from every side. The dream is so overwhelming that he jolts awake in his bed, utterly sweating profusely. He quickly stands up with his shaky body and begins to puke into the toilet, his head spinning from the intense pain. He has no clue what's going on with him. Suddenly, his eyes fall on the key spell notes that the old man gave him, and he notices some words flashing on the page, which says, Lost Immortal Sutra. He quickly grabs the notes and thoroughly scans them from all angles, but he finds nothing unusual. Well, this makes him only think if he's really just anemic. As the sun begins to rise, signaling the start of a new day, he washes his face and looks at himself in the mirror. He feels more refreshed and awake. He then decides to start his day with some game time. He grabs his phone, pinches his finger, and puts a few drops of blood on the screen, and his avatar quickly loads up. Once inside the game, he's surprised to see that the Skeleton Knight is still there, and this only means that the monsters in the game and those in real life don't affect each other. Well, it seems like this is a welcome discovery because it gives him another chance to give it a go. The monster charges at him again, and once more, our boy finds himself defeated by the Skeleton Knight. After hours of playing, he's utterly exhausted. The boss is weaker than the real-life counterpart, but without the Zhuan's help, he's struggling to find a way to defeat it. The only option now is to perfect his positioning and keep trying. Results might take days, and he's unsure how much blood he'll lose in the process. To get a sense of the blood loss, he looks up information online, but the sheer amount of data is overwhelming. So, in a classic move, he decides to keep it simple and just munch on some nuts for a quick energy boost. Other than that, he could simply avoid being killed to deal with his blood loss issue. Still, he decides to buy some food first before grinding again in the following days. He puts on his jacket and heads to a nearby grocery store, picking up all the healthy options to ensure he gets enough nutrients. Back home, Joe starts grinding once more, and during this intense period of gameplay, he piles up cans of food beside him. Well, it seems like he did not pick the healthy options after all. After many attempts, he finally begins to match the Skeleton Knight. He finds an opening while he is airborne and smashes the monster's skull into smithereens. This kill drops a dimensional crystal of level 13, which boosts speed. Joe proudly takes his reward, but when he checks his stats, he sees his speed points only increase by a few, bringing it up to 9. He finds it odd since it should have gone up to 13, but it seems he's reached the limit for his current level. Our boy is mulling over the idea of using Bitter Meditation to reach the legendary level, but as Jing Daoxian said, Bitter Meditation is nothing compared to Invincible Constitution. He's itching to learn a higher level Kuai fighting skill, so he's wondering if he should give the spell try which Jing Daoxian gave it to him. That's when something unexpected clicks in his mind. He quickly hops onto his chair, boots up his PC, and plugs in that pen drive his stepsister delivered and his dad sent. He's thinking there might be a key spell on it, but he shrugs it off, thinking it's unlikely. But as soon as the system reads the pen drive, we see that there's indeed a spell called Sun Shooting. His jaw drops to see this, and he pinches himself to make sure he's not dreaming. You see, both the Sun Shooting spell and Invincible Constitution can help people reach the legendary level and beyond, and they're mainly used for attacks. The Sun Shooting spell is less demanding than Invincible Constitution, and it appears to be a family key spell from someone in the Federation. He has no clue where his father got this. He wonders if he got hand on the Sun Shooting spell through Aang family's connections, and paid it to acquire it. By the way, Aang family is our boy's step-family, but he quickly shrugs off the thought, convincing himself his father isn't the type to go to such lengths for something like this. Just then, his father's phone rings, and it's our boy calling. The father is curious why his son would call at this hour, and when he picks up, our boy throws him off by asking if he's still in one piece. The father is confused and doesn't know how to respond, but then snaps, telling our boy to knock on wood and calling him a damned brat. Well, it seems like his dad's doing fine, and our boy was just checking in. He then gets serious and says he has a question. The father tells him to go ahead, so our boy asks where he got his hands on the Sun Shooting spell. There's a long pause before the father asks what Sun Shooting spell he's talking about. This news shocks our boy, and he quickly asks his father again if he didn't tell Ang Jing to give it to him. The man quickly responds that he's not interested in cultivation, so he does not have any reason to get something like this in the first place. Well, this leaves our boy disappointed to learn his father never thought of him in that way. However, he's still puzzled about why Ang Jing said it was from her dad, and this is just making things complicated. His father then adds that it might be a gift from Ang Jing. Our boy acknowledges this and quickly ends the call, which annoys his dad, but he calms down and decides to ask around about who gave his son the Sun Shooting spell. Back with our boy, he reflects on how the Ang family seems to be taking a special interest in his father. He's confused about why Jing challenged him at school, and he also almost missed the test because of his stepbrother, Inspector Ang. Now, out of the blue, she's given him such a rare key fighting skill. It doesn't add up, so he decides to focus on practicing the spell instead of worrying about who gave it to him. As he starts to drift off to sleep again, his heart begins to race, and he feels a sense of unease. Suddenly, he sees those same demonic hands reaching for him once more. When the hands grip his throat, he starts to panic, and he wakes up drenched in sweat. After experiencing this wild dream twice in a row, he's convinced that Jing Daoxian must be behind it. He heads to the sink to freshen up, and the old man's words flash through his mind. He then glances at the small notebook and wonders if it could help him deal with the troubling dreams. After reading these weird notes for a few hours, he finally starts to get the hang of the connection between Qi and the human magnetic field. Before diving deeper into this nerdy stuff, his stomach starts to rumble like crazy, and he remembers he's been so absorbed in reading that he forgot to eat. He stands up, grabs another bowl of instant food, and lets out a satisfying burp. Back at it with the reading, he completely forgets where he left off. After a moment of thought, he decides to just look into the notes once again. But as he focuses, it feels like he's seeing these words for the first time, as if he's never read them before. Even if he does not have the best memory, it's still hard to believe he'd forget so quickly. Once he begins reading once again from the start, he finally reaches the part about Qi spell and the human magnetic field. But suddenly, his mind starts wondering if he turned off the lights in the kitchen. After putting a lot of thought into it, he still can't remember if he turned off the lights in the kitchen. Frustrated, he starts reading the book again, but quickly realizes he's forgotten everything he just read. He takes a deep breath, gets into God mode, and starts squeezing every bit of information from the notes. Despite his best efforts to concentrate, he still gets distracted and forgets everything he had remembered. This is the strangest thing happening to him. Every time he gets distracted, he forgets all the previous content he read, but he remains determined, goes back into God mode, and decides to copy the contents of the notes into a book. But as soon as he puts pen to paper, he forgets everything again. He then tries to take a photo of the notes, but that attempt fails too. The capture doesn't pick up the text. He finds it really weird and wonders if putting the book away will make everything go back to normal. Just then, his phone rings with an unknown caller tag. He picks it up, and it's Xuan on the other end, asking if he's decided which university he'll be attending next. Seems like this idiot was so engrossed in his gaming lately that he completely forgot the results would be announced today. Xuan then asks if he wants to go to the same university as him. Our boy asks which one he is talking about. Looks like Li Xuan is in the #1 spot, and our boy Joe has scored second. So, with their positions in mind, the playboy proudly announces that they're going to Sunset College. That rings a bell for Joe because he's heard that Sunset College recently discovered a new dimensional realm and a symbiotic pet, making it a top choice for enrollment. But that is when he starts to panic when he realizes that Liu Yang is the turf of the Ang family, and he probably doesn't want to get tangled up with his siblings. Nonetheless, he dives back into his gaming session. While playing, he's up against some kind of mosquito enemy. He gathers fire in his fist and throws it at the pesky insect, but the mosquito quickly avoids the attack and slices him in half. He is frustrated to see that even after defeating the Skeleton King, he still can't defeat this little critter. He didn't expect to still be struggling against the silver-winged mosquito. The fact that it's so fast and can fly makes it nearly impossible to catch. A sudden knock on the door interrupts his thoughts. He quickly heads to the door to see who it might be. When he opens it, he's surprised to find Li Xuan standing outside. It's pretty odd to see him on his doorstep so early in the morning. But this playboy doesn't even bother to ask for permission, and just walks inside the home. Our boy finally asks Xuan what the hell he's doing here and mentions that he still hasn't decided if he wants to go to Sunset College. Xuan then offers him a book, telling him to take a look. Joe flips through the pages and asks what it is. The playboy then reveals that it's a secret document from Sunset College and tells him to examine it closely. As our boy takes a look at the papers, the playboy points to a drawing and explains that it's a creature from a dimensional realm in its visceral form. He boasts that this type of creature recently appeared in the dimensional realm discovered by Sunset College. Our boy feels a bit creeped out by Xuan's overenthusiasm and asks what's so special about it. The poor playboy quickly feels disappointed and a bit irritated by the question. So, he snaps at our boy, asking if he even understands the significance of this kind of symbiotic pet. He explains that if Joe were to lose his heart in battle, this creature could quickly replace it, essentially giving him a second chance at life. Even after hearing all this, our boy still feels pretty clueless, which is really bugging Xuan. Our boy does understand the significance of this symbiotic pet, but isn't thrilled about being surprised by everything. Xuan reveals that the dimensional realm is under the jurisdiction of Sunset College, so only people from that college can access it. He adds that if the news were officially released, top students from around the world would rush to enroll, but the quota is limited. Hearing this, our boy's interest is finally piqued, and he quickly agrees to go to Sunset College. Xuan then mentions that there are rumors the Ang family will also be attending Sunset College. This news rattles our boy's nerves, and Xuan is surprised by his scared expression. He asks why our boy looks so afraid, to which Joe just shrugs and says he's not scared at all. He confirms he's going to sign up today, and the playboy tells him to pack his bags because they're heading to Luoyang in his Lamborghini. A while later, we switch to an FBI headquarters or something like that, where two officers are still trying to track down Jin Daoxian. They pull up the security footage from Changjun Road and spot our boy on the video. They start making guesses that Joe might be connected with Jin Daoxian. Meanwhile, on a speedy highway where the city is about to face a storm, Joe and Xuan are tearing through the highway in their Lamborghini. Joe's having a blast, but he's also worried how this journey is going to take a lot of time, because they will have to bypass all of the areas near dimensional realms. He also thinks about the challenge his game is posing. The difficulty has almost doubled, and he figures that keeping on playing might just waste his blood. He glances over at Xuan, who's lounging in the passenger seat. Feeling a bit drowsy, Joe starts to nod off but quickly jolts himself awake. He's sure that if he falls asleep in the car and gets sleep paralysis, he'll be in big trouble. But he's not sure why he's feeling dizzy and running a fever. Then, he remembers the old man Jin, who had mentioned how important it is to be healthy if he wants to impress girls, and how low energy isn't going to cut it. So, with that in mind, Joe decides that staying healthy is crucial. He resolves to play games in moderation from now on to keep his health in check. Well, this is a kind of promise I make on a daily basis, but I always end up writing down some fun stories all the time for you guys. Our boy starts feeling jittery just thinking about the old man Jin. He's seriously considering that if he ever bumps into that old coot again, he's going to give him a piece of his mind. Ever since meeting that guy, he's been feeling pretty down. He's determined to get his revenge once he's stronger, but suddenly, he feels something weird inside him. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out the notes the old man gave him. The name on the cover starts glowing with energy. Before he opens them, he checks on Xuan, who's still deep in meditation, and figures he won't notice. Plus, he's bored, so reading the notes might be a good way to kill some time. As soon as he cracks open the notes, words start popping out, and yellow energy begins to swirl in the middle of his chest. After a while, those notes of Lost Immortal Sutra have vanished, and as he opens his eyes, he looks at his empty hand, and he's totally confused about what just happened. He thinks about if this was a dream. He wonders if this is a dream, but as he closes his eyes again, he suddenly finds himself standing in the middle of an enchantment circle, but he is jolted awake once more. It looks like since he finished reading the Lost Immortal Sutra, all that energy has cultivated inside him. When he checks his system stats, he finds that his QI spell has changed to Lost Immortal Sutra. He starts to concentrate, and a flash of light sparkles in his hand once again. He realizes that he can no longer use bitter meditation now, because the panel has switched to Lost Immortal Sutra. Not gonna lie, in this manhwa, the power system is so underexplained that it makes him want to puke. The whole thing is just an unexplained mess, and these shitty translations are only making it worse. Joe looks at his phone and wonders what kind of key spell this Lost Immortal Sutra really is. He also notices that he has managed to break the 9-point attribute limitation of the mortal stage. Feeling pretty glad that he became stronger, Joe is actually happy to have met the old man, Jin Daoxin. Once they finally enter the huge mansion, Xuan reassures him to leave the matters of Sunset College to him and suggests Joe stay here until college starts. I guess this is expected of rich people, since they can just afford mansions anywhere they want. Once they settle in the living room, Xuan brings something to drink for his friend. Joe asks if he lives alone here without any helpers, to which Xuan agrees. He then offers Joe a weird hybrid can of Coca-Cola and Pepsi. As they chug down the drink, Xuan's phone abruptly rings. He talks to someone for a while, and once he finally hangs up, he tells Joe to just have a rest here, and in the meantime, he himself is going outside for some work. Once he's alone, he starts wandering around and quickly sheds his coat. He begins swinging his fists, and then reflects on how a power punch requires a big movement, making it tough to use the same technique to deliver a precise 1-inch punch. He remembers trying it on that pesky silver-winged mosquito, but the little critter dodged his punch with ease. Looks like he'll need a new technique to handle that mosquito. That's when he recalls the skill he picked up, which is Skeleton Palm. He glances at his hand, which is still billowing smoke, and thinks the Skeleton Palm's rank is pretty low, so it probably won't be very effective. But he decides to train with it anyway, and as soon as he swings his hand, a gust of wind blades zooms around the area. He notices that this move is quite fast, making the Skeleton Palm a surprisingly good match for his 1-inch punch. So, he keeps training, pushing himself until he's utterly exhausted. He realizes that although it's a rank 1 QI fighting skill, it surprisingly consumes a lot of ki. Deciding to test it out in the game, he grabs his phone, puts some blood on it, and his avatar appears right away. Hilariously, his avatar lands right on top of a mutated ant. The little creature looks pretty ticked off and swings at him immediately. Looks like he's in trouble because his QE has dropped significantly after his training session, but somehow he manages to dodge the attack. But surprisingly, his QI recovers a bit, thanks to the Lost Immortal Sutra, which also boosts his movement speed, which seems like a nice bonus. He then delivers his mixture of 2 skills, known as 1-inch Skeleton Palm, hitting the ant directly and causing a big explosion that finally takes the little critter out. Just then, a system window pops up, showing an achievement. His Skeleton Palm has leveled up to level 10 and has been upgraded to Ash Palm. Our boy is amazed by this and notices the skill now consumes 5 points of ki, which makes it almost as powerful as his power punch. He's itching to try out his newfound power, but since the mutated immense strength ant is way too weak, he decides to test it on the skeleton knight. As soon as he presses the icon for that dungeon, his avatar lands in Guida City. That's when he remembers. Since he's already beaten the skeleton knight, he'll only get another shot at the skeleton king if he dies and respawns. So, reluctantly, he lets those little skeletons take him out. After a lot of messing around with his new skills, he finally gets the hang of the skeleton knight's attack patterns. Apparently, he started using his high speed to dodge and strike the skeleton knight from behind with his ash palm technique. That single attack shatters the skeleton's head into smithereens. After a while, a lady steps into the mansion. As soon as she sees him down there, she calls out, and her stern call wakes our boy up. He is startled and quickly sits up, asking who she is. The lady demands to know why he's alone and where Li Xuan is. He mentions that Li Xuan is out, which makes the girl assume he must have been hanging around with some girls or shady people again. She curses him for always avoiding her whenever she tries to reach out. With that odd remark, she turns to leave, leaving our boy more confused than ever. But then she suddenly stops, grabs his hand, and tells him he can serve as a stopgap. And with that, she starts dragging him along, even without his permission. The girl turns to him again and reminds him that she's Li Xuan's older sister. Since he's a friend of her brother, she wants to ask him for a favor. Well, come to think of it, our boy remembers that Xuan is indeed his friend now, thanks to all the help and favors they are doing to each other. But he'd rather avoid any trouble and just enjoy some alone time to play games. As he mutters this to himself, the girl asks what he's talking about, and he quickly brushes it off, saying it's nothing. She then tells him to get cleaned up and dress properly. He agrees, and a while later, they find themselves at Sunset College's pet arena. The place is buzzing with lights, almost like stepping into a neon city. Once they arrive, they get off their heavy bike and meet two girls who are already there. The lady tells him he doesn't need to do anything, as he can just stand aside and cheer for her. The boy agrees and quickly starts playing his favorite game, which annoys the lady pretty much. As more people start to gather, someone expresses their amazement at seeing Li Xuan's sister arrive. They wonder aloud why Xuan himself isn't here, and the guy, standing with his girlfriend, smugly jokes that maybe Xuan is just scared. Li Xuan's sister cuts him off, telling him to cut the crap because she can handle them all on her own. She then turns to the lady standing beside this guy, addressing her as Sume, and reminds her that since they defeated the mutated ancient warhorse together, why is she trying to take the symbiotic egg for herself? Sume begins pretending to be frightened, and while hiding behind her boyfriend, she claims that she delivered the final fatal blow, and thus, the egg rightfully belongs to her. That is when her boyfriend chimes in, reminding everyone that they agreed to fight among themselves, and whoever wins will take that symbiotic egg. So he says she better hold her horses before pointing fingers. The sister then addresses Gao Yang, suggesting it might be better for him to just hand over the egg without a fight, given they already know who's going to win this showdown. By the way, our girl's name is Wei Yang, but Gao Yang's arrogance is on another level. He labels her as his junior and declares he won't fight her himself, claiming it would be an unfair advantage. With a smug grin, he reveals he has another companion who will take her out. Just then, footsteps echo through the room, catching the Wei Yang's attention. As she looks toward the source of the sound, a figure emerges from the shadows. This guy is a sophomore, who goes by the name Gu Dian, and he is exuding some seriously intense aura that even makes the sister, who is getting full of herself, start to panic. Even our boy can feel the vicious aura radiating from this newcomer, causing the others around to tremble with fear. Shortly after, the two contenders face off. The bald guy tries to provoke Wei Yang by taunting her to come at him. In response, she starts radiating an intense aura, ready to take him down on her own. Wei Yang's friend advises her not to fight this monster and suggests it might be better if they just hand over the symbiotic egg. Our boy, curious, asks who this guy called Gu Dian is. The terrified girl quickly explains that he's known as the devil in school. She adds that there are rumors he once beat up a senior on his very first day of school. With his curiosity fully piqued, he starts to wonder if this big guy is really as strong as they say. He has also started to feel concerned for Wei Yang as well. Just as they're about to clash, Gao Yang starts mocking Wei Yang, asking if she's really scared in the face of Gu Dian. Seems like she's fully provoked because she swings her massive leg and aims a kick at the bald guy's head. But Gao Yang just tilts his head slightly, and her kick lands on his shoulder, doing nothing more than tickling him. Wei Yang's shocked by his crazy defensive power, so she leaps into the air again, trying for another brutal kick to his head. But Gao Yang just stands there, chill as a cucumber, barely reacting like he's the second coming of One Punch Man. As Wei Yang's leg comes crashing down, the guy snags it with his bare hands, and with lightning speed, flings her down to the ground with such force that a cloud of dust and smoke erupts. When the dust settles, it's clear she's been slammed so hard she's practically become part of the ground. He then steps towards her, making it clear that she's no match for him. And it looks like he's right. Her forehead is bleeding, and her body is completely banged up. But this jerk then kicks her again like she's yesterday's trash, sending her tumbling. He cockily asks if she wants to continue the fight. Her friends tell her to give up on the symbiotic egg, and they also admit defeat themselves. The cocky blonde woman begins throwing verbal jabs at Wei Yang, saying that even her friends have surrendered, so she might as well accept it like a good little dog before she gets herself messed up from every angle possible. Wei Yang tries to stand up with her trembling body. As she attempts to utter a few words, the bald guy grabs her by the throat and slams her down into the ground again, treating her like a discarded mud doll. The shockwaves ripple through the area and the bald guy stands up, thoroughly enjoying his moment of triumph. But the bald guy's eyes widen in surprise as our stubborn lady, Wei Yang, starts to stand up again, saying she's not done yet. Hearing her unwavering resolve, the baldy gets serious with a bloodshot gaze. He balls up his fist and starts running at her, but before he can throw his punch, our boy comes charging in. Their punches collide with a shockwave of power. Gudian is really intrigued by this newcomer who easily blocked his attack, and asks our boy who he is. Joe quickly introduces himself, mentioning he's just been admitted to Sunset College recently. Gao Yang throws in his 2 cents, saying that even though they'll be schoolmates soon, they're not going to hold back on giving our boy a lesson if he's trying to play the hero and save the day. The girl warns our boy that it's pretty dangerous here, so he'd better not jump into the fight. But before she knows it, he grabs her and hoists her over his shoulder like she's a toddler, telling her she's the one who should be resting and taking it easy. Come to think of it, doesn't it seem like this character has grown way too tall? And considering how short our boy used to look back in the first chapter, I just want to bleach my eyes. Anyway, despite all her protests, he carries her back to her friends. The ladies let out a sigh of relief, glad to see their friend is safe. On the other hand, Wei Yang isn't quite sure how our boy is going to deal with this bald guy. When our boy finally faces off with the bald guy, he tries to channel his inner Shunin protagonist and tells him that fighting to the death isn't the best solution. The bald guy then asks if he has any other suggestions for resolving the dispute. Our boy responds that they can keep the fight PG-13 and offers to give the bald guy a punch, and if the baldy takes fewer than 3 steps back, our boy will admit defeat. Gudian gets annoyed by what he sees as a meaningless tactic, so he starts radiating a menacing aura and tells our boy to bring it on already and not waste his time. Xiao remains unfazed, however, and warns the baldy that his punch is pretty powerful, so he might want to save his teeth. Meanwhile, Gao Yang finds it pretty fascinating that Gudian just agreed to fight like that. The blonde woman is starting to lose her cool, worried that there's a good chance he might actually lose if he takes 3 or more steps back. But her boyfriend quickly chimes in, reassuring her not to worry. He explains that Gudian's Chui fighting skill is the porcupine armor, made from needle porcupine crystals. Not only does it make his body as hard as steel, but it also gives him a nasty counterattack ability. And since his porcupine armor has reached the 9th rank, the last guy who challenged him like that ended up losing his arm. So, in a nutshell, our boy's plan might have been a bit naive. Seems like we will know it soon enough, because our boy balls up his fist, and as he starts to gather momentum, the half-glove on his hand begins to disintegrate. His punch lands squarely in the bald guy's gut, and his face tightens as the force of the punch continues to build. This eventually causes a massive explosion, sending the bald guy sliding backward, way beyond his original position. Wei Yang is completely blown away by what she witnessed. It looks like Baldy has lost decisively, and that last punch was so brutal that our boy's fist is smeared with blood. That is when the blonde woman starts shouting, because she is having a hard time accepting defeat. She makes excuses that our boy is not part of Wei Yang's party, so even if he won, the victory does not count. Her dignified boyfriend gives her a solid slap across the face for whining after a fair loss, and tells her there's no denying they've lost. He insists he's a man of his word and isn't backing down. He crosses paths with our boy, saying they'll meet again and he'll be waiting for that moment. With that, the 3 of them leave the area. The girls quickly swarm our boy with their flattery, showering him with well-deserved praise. They point out how their junior is so strong, and these all seem to be falling all over him in admiration. That's when Wei Yang calls out to our boy, pointing to his hand. He shrugs it off, saying it's just a minor injury and nothing to worry about as long as the bleeding stops. He then reminds her, with genuine concern, that she's injured more seriously and should head to the infirmary right away. The girl agrees, and our boy, still in his typical fashion, hoists her over his shoulder like she's a plush toy. She seems genuinely happy to see that her brother has a friend like our boy. Shortly after, they return to the mansion, and our boy is visibly annoyed to realize how long it's been since he last played his game. He's finally ready to dive into his beloved pastime. Well, or so he thought. Just as our boy is about to dive into his game, Xuan makes a dramatic entrance into the mansion. And by now, our boy is convinced that the entire universe is conspiring to keep him from fully enjoying his favorite game. Xuan strolls over to our boy, gives him a pat, and asks if he still remembers the dimensional realm he mentioned before, the one where a creature in its visceral form was found. He is asking this because he apparently wants to invite Joe for a visit to that place. Our boy finds this pretty strange and points out that they shouldn't even have access to the realm before school has even started. Joanne, with a smirk, proudly assures him that taking them there is just a piece of cake for him. But it seems our boy is more interested in playing his game than listening to Joanne. As he's absorbed in checking his stats, Bluehead gets increasingly annoyed and snaps at him for not responding. Our boy just pretends to listen, which just infuriates Joanne even more. He then begins to walk away and warns our boy to hit the hay early since they'll be leaving first thing in the morning. Our boy agrees, though it's unclear if he's actually paying attention. Still glued to his smartphone screen, he eventually calls out to Joanne. When Bluehead turns around, he asks what's required to hatch the symbiotic egg of a legendary level creature. Joanne is a bit surprised by this sudden question and asks if he's talking about the legendary level skeleton knight. He then advises him not to do anything foolish, explaining that it takes at least a dozen points of ki to hatch a legendary level creature. Bluehead explains that if the hatcher doesn't have enough ki, their vitality and flesh will be consumed instead, which basically means they could end up injured or disabled. To our boy, this sounds like he might still have a chance, so he asks if there are any exceptions to this rule. Juan proudly explains that he himself is a big exception. His invincible constitution makes him more resilient and compensates for the loss of vitality, allowing him to hatch some legendary level creatures even at a lower level. However, Juan warns that hatching a legendary level creature still costs him more ki than he can handle, and he can't sustain it. He advises our boy to give up on the idea unless he's prepared to risk death. Once he's in his bedroom, our boy reflects on how he wouldn't fear death if it were in the game, but since he's dealing with the symbiotic egg in real life, things are trickier. He then gets an idea. Since the phone unlocks dungeons based on real-life locations, he quickly snaps a photo of the egg. The egg starts to disappear from his hands as the system announces that it's been stored in the storage. Now that it's inside, he finally has the option to either hatch or accept a fusion. Although he's unsure what the accept a fusion option means, he taps it anyway like a curious cat. The next system window appears, stating that the mutated immense strength ant has been detected, with a fusion rate of 47%, and asks if he'd like to fuse with the symbiotic egg. Without a second thought, our boy presses the yes button with his chibi little avatar hands, and the fusion process begins. Since he already knows that with his current ki, he might not be able to hatch the skeleton knight anyway. So, he decides to see what the mutated immense strength ant will be like after fusing with the legendary level symbiotic egg. Once the evolution process finishes, he anxiously checks the stats. To his surprise, the pet is still at the mortal level, even though it's fused with the legendary level egg. The little critter now has an innate skill called Skeleton Pierce Attack, rank 10. He hopes it might be strong enough to take on the silver-winged mosquito. So, he jumps into the game, and just as the mosquito comes crashing down, he quickly summons the skeleton ant and commands it to stop the mosquito. His friend quickly uses the Skeleton Pierce skill, and spikes start popping out of the ground, aiming to hit the flying mosquito. Despite hundreds of sharp needles shooting up, they're not enough to stop the pesky bug. The mosquito zips past every needle and goes straight for our boy. Seeing that critter heading his way, our boy balls up his fist and delivers a devastating blow, only to hit the bare ground. And after he misses his chance, his avatar is once again slashed into 2 equal pieces. This is yet another defeat he has to face, which leaves him thinking about this crazy skill this critter is always using against him. The next day arrives, and our boy is feeling quite anxious about seeing his ride. He asks his friend again if they're really going to ride it. The friend flashes a pleasant smile and assures him they definitely will. He explains that it's a legendary level jade-eyed white tiger, and that he went through great pains to hatch it. As they both hop onto the tiger, it takes off with such speed that our poor boy starts leaking blood. He thinks to himself that a car ride would have been way more comfortable. Once they hit the city, Xuan swipes his card through a scanner, and a soldier waves them through. They hop into an elevator that takes them further down into an underground facility. That's when they learn that Luoyang was once the capital of 13 countries. After the dimensional Strom got involved, the whole region sank and is now connected to a mysterious underground world. So this place is also called the Underground Buddha City. When they finally reach the bottom and the elevator doors open, they're greeted by a bustling scene. A horde of people is wandering around like it's a tourist hotspot, with vendors setting up stalls and peddling their goods. Our boy curiously asks if this is really a dimensional realm since it's hard to believe students would set up stalls here. Xuan explains that the army has cleared the perimeter to keep people safe at the entrance, but it's just that what they're selling isn't very impressive. However, he proudly adds that he has an exploration map used internally by the army. Joe isn't surprised, since he knows that there's nothing this playboy can't afford. As they continue walking, Xuan explains that there's supposed to be an underground lotus pond where the Buddha Heart Lotus resides. While strolling, Joe spots that palm-like shape again. He quickly snaps a photo, and another app appears on his phone. which is a clear sign that this place is also a dungeon in the game. He tells our boy to quit taking photos and just catch up with him. So, the two of them keep strolling, and after quite a bit of walking, they finally arrive at a jaw-dropping sight, a massive pond overflowing with lotus flowers. Joe points out that this is the Buddha heart lotus, and it turns out there's a creature whose symbiotic form is the heart of the lotus. Our boy wonders why these lotus flowers can't just grow near the shore, making it easier to grab one. Also, why can't they just swim there to grab one of the flowers for themselves? Joe bluntly explains that the water in the pond is so corrosive it dissolves flesh. Anyone who tries to wade in will end up as a skeleton, so it's a strict no-go zone. Just then, someone else crashes their party. This newcomer is sporting angelic wings, and once he finally stops in midair, he further adds to our duo's conversation that the only way to reach the flowers is if you can fly over the toxic, acid-filled pond. Almost instantly, those normal-looking flowers react to the threat. The delicate petals transform into blade-like projectiles and shoot straight for the guy in the air. But the winged man is quick on his feet. He summons his sword and meets the flower head-on. With a powerful slash, he cuts down the flower, causing its petals to rain down like blood. Our boy is amazed by the display of power. Xuan even mentions that this is to be expected from the Luo family, who are known for their exceptional swordsmanship. He adds that this guy with wings, known as Luo Xuan, isn't even that powerful. Despite saying this, our greedy playboy just can't tear his eyes away from those impressive wings. He's feeling a bit envious and thinks to himself how amazing it would be to have a flying symbiotic pet. He then asks our boy if they should explore somewhere else since there might be other dimensional creatures around. He also points out that this area is so strange it's been listed by the army as one of the unknown dangerous zones. Our boy curiously asks what he means by dangerous, and Xuan shows him his phone screen. It highlights how many army personnel have died exploring this area, not from attacks but due to sudden organ failure. For safety's sake, Xuan advises they should make their decisions wisely. Just as they're about to move on, the swamp starts bubbling up. A massive lotus flower emerges, adorned with Buddha faces all over it. Looks like they've finally found the threat they were trying to avoid. The Buddha lotus flower quickly reacts and prepares for battle. The man in the air quickly summons one wing, turning it into a winged pony. But the Buddha flower isn't playing around. It fires a giant red beam at the pony, turning it into a pile of bones. The once cocky winged guy starts falling into the vat of acid, and our boy calls out to him. Xuan is sure this guy is done for as soon as he hits the swamp. But surprisingly, Luo lands on a lotus flower leaf and hops out of the toxic water. Xuan realizes that this dude's QI fighting skill is something like a lightness skill, but he's still pretty far from the shore. Xuan turns to our boy, asking what the hell he's doing. It turns out, our boy is trying to put his symbiotic pet gauntlet into the toxic water. Surprisingly, the water can't harm his weapon. The acid only burns flesh. With his plan set, our boy pulls his hand out of the toxic water, sets his symbiotic pet down into the acid, and stands ready. Xuan asks what he's up to, and Joe simply says he's going to help the man stuck in the swarm. Meanwhile, Luo is leaping around to avoid the acid, but there's no solid ground left to hop anymore. His only option seems to be touching the acid, and to make things worse, the Buddha Lotus shoots another laser beam at him. Just as it seems like Luo is done for, the swamp water starts to bubble, and our boy's skeleton ant pet emerges. Luo is a bit startled by the appearance of another creature, and the ant quickly moves through the air, intercepting the laser beam and taking the hit directly. Being a skeleton, the ant is unaffected by the acid or the lasers. Luo manages to find a platform to land on, which is of course none other than the back of Joe's ant. Our boy then commands his skeleton ant to retreat. The ant's eyes start shimmering, and it quickly begins marching toward the shore. The Buddha lotus flower shoots its lasers, but the attack is as effective as duct tape on a spaceship window. The ant picks up speed and eventually reaches the shore. Standing there like a cool guy, our boy watches as Luo Xuan hops from Ant's back. Once he touches the solid ground, he asks our boy his name, and that is when Joe Wen introduces himself. Luo thanks him for his help, but Joe tries to downplay it, saying it was nothing. However, Luo insists on showing his gratitude, promising to repay our boy for what he did today. Meanwhile, Xuan is completely blown away by the skeleton ant and quickly asks what in the world this pet is. Ju responds that it's a skeleton ant. Xuan is seriously impressed, and he is further blown away that not only is the ant immune to the acid, but it also handles the flower's attacks like a champ. He tells our boy to send the ant into the swamp to see if it can take down the monster. He is confident the flower must have something valuable, so challenging the monster is worth the shot. But our boy, however, suspects it's no ordinary mutated Buddha heart lotus. He thinks it might be another legendary level creature, and since this is real life, he doesn't want his skeleton ant to get killed. Joe quickly recalls his aunt, and Xuan asks why he's so scared, pointing out that it's just a symbiotic pet, and that defeating the monster could yield something much more valuable. But my guy makes it clear that he's not willing to gamble with his skeleton ant, and with that, he starts walking off. Once they return to their mansion, we see that this playboy is visibly disappointed. He's frustrated that he wasted 2 entry passes and didn't find anything worthwhile. He worries that tomorrow, everyone will hear about the giant Buddha heart lotus flower, and someone else will beat them to it. Holding his phone, Joe tells his friend that he's heading back to his room and asks for the map of Buddha City, which might come in handy someday. Xuan hands over the map, and Joe happily retreats to his room, leaving the playboy wondering why he seems so pleased. Once he is in his room, he smears his phone screen with blood, causing the Lotus Flower app to boot up. He finds himself in the underground Buddha City dungeon, surprised to see a multitude of Buddha heart lotus flowers carpeting the water all the way to the shore, unlike in real life. However, the giant lotus flower is still nowhere to be seen. Shrugging off the disappointment, he decides to proceed with defeating monsters in the dungeon. Meanwhile, back in reality, the Buddha heart lotus flower has awakened once again. Other players, having heard rumors and stories from their friend Lu Xuan, are now eager to take down the flower. The lackeys of the main guy are pretty impressed to see their boss call in his top-tier legendary creature, a golden-eyed hawk, to deal with the flower. The cocky boss, with a dramatic adjustment of his glasses, sends his golden eagle to attack the Buddha heart lotus flower. Back in the game, Joe Wen is dodging lasers with slick moves while cutting down lotus flowers left and right. His skeleton ant is also in action, delivering a final strike to a flower and causing it to drop a crystal. Seems like he finally gets something valuable after slaying so many creatures. He examines the skill crystal and realizes he hasn't heard much about the Buddha heart lotus's key fighting skill. Given the lotus flower's attack style, which seemed to involve hidden weapons, he decides to absorb the crystal. As he absorbs the crystal, he notices its effects in real life. The warm sensation he feels is completely different from the pain he experienced with his power punch absorption. This new warmth indicates a new, intriguing power, and he begins to consider how this might enhance his abilities. As Joe Wen's heart feels relaxed, as if it's being touched by heavenly waters, the system flashes a notification. New skill acquired, Meditation rank 7. It's a strength-based skill he wasn't expecting. Curious about its effects, he concentrates, and a blue aura surrounds him from all directions. However, after a short while, he's disappointed to find that the only sensation he feels is a warm, comforting one. There's no immediate sign of the skill's power or impact. He thinks about his friend Li Xuan, and realizes that even he might not fully understand the chi fighting skill of the Buddha heart lotus, which is likely why he never mentioned it. In the game, Joe Wen gets caught off guard by a surprise laser attack, but manages to block it just in time. His excitement bubbles over when he sees that there's a Buddha heart lotus monster in the game, just like he hoped. He eagerly commands his skeleton ant to go in for the attack. The skeleton ant leaps into action, while the Buddha heart lotus counters with red laser energy blocks. But these lasers barely make a dent in the ant. As the flower starts to sink back into the water, our boy grins, thinking the flower is running scared. So he tells his ant to finish it off. Just as the ant is about to strike, the flower's giant jaw snaps open, full of sharp teeth, and swallows the ant whole. My guy's grin fades, and his confidence shatters as he realizes the flower had a sneaky trick up its sleeve, leaving him feeling frustrated and tricked. Since he can't do much and can't get close to the swamp without his skeleton ant, he decides to head to the restricted zone Li Xuan mentioned. Even if he dies, he figures it won't be a big deal, since he kind of wanted to die and get respawned anyway. With that thought in mind, he starts walking into the restricted area. Once inside, he finds himself in a rundown place with flowing water and old Buddha statues. As he climbs the stairs, he thinks it's a really strange place, and he hasn't encountered a single monster on his way here. But suddenly he notices something and realizes the restricted zone is just ahead. This place turns out to be a small Buddhist temple. Well, he's not so sure about this small part, because it certainly doesn't look small at all. He starts taking his steps, but after just a few steps, the game is over. It's a bit of a huh moment for him since he didn't even realize when he died. He smears his screen with blood again and tries running inside the temple, but once more his avatar's body begins to twist. Before he knows it, the game is over again. This time he notices that when the character died, the internal organs seem to twist slightly. He remembers what Li Xuan said about those soldiers. There were no visible injuries, and everyone inside died from organ failure. So, it's clear now that even the military couldn't handle this situation. After so many failed attempts, he throws his phone away and decides to go back to sleep. The next day finally arrives, and the first thing we hear is hearty laughter. It seems like Li Xuan is pretty amused to hear that once people got wind of the Buddha heart lotus, some of them couldn't wait and ended up getting their butts handed to them by that monster. Our boy steps out and asks what's so funny this morning. Bluehead explains that last night, a senior took his legendary level golden-eyed hawk and tried to attack the Buddha heart lotus from above. All the feathers on his hawk were burned, and he finds it hilarious how miserably they failed. That's when our boy reminds him that if they had continued the fight, they would have been the ones getting laughed at. Bluehead further mentions that the news has gone viral on the college forum, and students from different grades are likely to try and take down the giant lotus. Our boy then asks if the military isn't going to eliminate the lotus. Xuan responds that although the lotus is powerful, there are likely many people in the military and the college who are capable of dealing with it. He explains that since the military hasn't taken any action yet, it seems they won't intervene. According to Federation regulations, the military is only supposed to intervene if the monster is above a certain danger level, unless there are special circumstances. It's a way to give the younger generation a chance to prove themselves and gain some resources. Just then, someone familiar appears at the door and gives a gentle knock. Xuan quickly responds, saying he's coming. Meanwhile, our boy's phone rings with his father's call. When he picks up, his father asks if he's currently in Luoyang. Our boy confirms he is and asks if there's any problem. The old man just smiles and explains that his stepmother, Lan, wants to see him and treat him to dinner. Our stupid protagonist quickly starts making lame excuses to avoid meeting his hot and sexy stepmother. Just take the chance, goddammit! If I were him, I would never have missed the chance. But just then, Xuan calls out to our boy that there's a visitor at the door who wants to meet him. As our boy starts walking toward the door, his father tells him that Ang Jing volunteered to pick him up and is on her way. Well, speaking of Ang Jing visiting, Xuan just told him there's a visitor waiting outside on the doorstep. He starts having a bad feeling about this, and his worst thoughts come true when he actually sees his hot stepsister. Xuan is shocked to realize that our boy is acquainted with the prominent Ang family and that his father married Ouyang Lan. Our boy quickly reminds his friend that he has nothing to do with the Ang family. It's just his father who married Ouyang Lan. Ang Jing gets annoyed hearing this comment and pouts for a moment, then annoyingly tells him that the driver is already waiting for them outside, so they should get going. It seems like our boy has no choice but to roll with it, so he just facepalms himself. As much as he wants to avoid the Ang family, he's just getting tangled up with them more and more. He tells Xuan that he's heading out, and his friend just flashes him an OK sign. With that, our boy follows his stepsister outside, and that's when she asks if he didn't practice the sun shooting spell. Our boy reminds her that their dad said he didn't give that spell to him. The girl gets embarrassed, and sternly demands to know if he's doubting that she was trying to trick him by giving him something random. Then, in her classic tsundere style, she annoyingly tells him that she's happy he didn't practice it, and explains that she gave it to him because she wants to hurt him with it. Our boy has no clue what her deal is and can't figure out why she's so angry at him. Still, he's sure it doesn't matter whether the spell was real or not since he's already learned Lost Immortal Sutra and can't practice other key spells now anyway. She tells him to get in the car, and once they're inside their luxury ride, we see someone secretly taking photos of our boy. These people appear to be from the FBI, and they've already created an entire profile on him. The assistant explains to their senior that Joe graduated from Guida High School, was seated second in his school, and was an excellent student overall. Currently, he's staying in Luoyang, which explains why they failed to find him back in Guida province. The senior deduces that our boy seems to have nothing to do with Jing Daoxian. However, the assistant reveals she's found something very interesting. Zhou Lingfeng, his father, is the man who recently married a widow from the Ang family. This news shocks the senior, who asks what the hell she's talking about. He finds it strange that Ouyang Lan would take a liking to someone like Zhou Lingfeng, and wonders if he has any connections with those outlanders. The assistant explains that while Zhou Lingfeng did reach the legendary level years ago, he's too old to be accepted by the outlanders. Maybe Ouyang Lan is interested in someone like him because he's a kept man. The senior objects, saying he doesn't see it that way because Ouyang Lan can't be that kind of woman. He explains that the Ang family was in chaos when its master died, with many big shots coveting their properties. Ang Tianzuo, who is her son, was only 13 at the time, so he questions whether someone as shrewd as Ouyang Lan would marry an incompetent man. Anyway, he tells the assistant to bring Joe Wen to him first, and she agrees. He also insists that the Ang family shouldn't hear about any of this. The next scene takes us to a grand mansion, and our boy, feeling anxious, steps out of the car. He's blown away by the mansion's opulence and finally sees his father along with his stepmom. His stepmother greets him warmly, saying she has been looking forward to meeting him for a long time. At the dining table, food is served, and his stepmother encourages everyone to try it. She offers him some lobster, which is also her daughter Jing's favorite. Jing happily nods in affirmation, looking forward to eating the delicious lobsters. But her mother bursts her bubble by saying that since Joe Wen is their guest, he should be allowed to eat first. Of course, Jing isn't thrilled to see her food being taken away just to be served to our lunatic MC. She gives him death glares, and the intensity of her anger is so immense that our boy can almost feel the heat radiating from her. The mother tells him to just ignore Jing and whispers into his ear that she is intentionally trying to punish her for bullying him before. The boy anxiously takes a piece of lobster and stuffs the fancy food into his mouth. He can tell the food is quite tasty, but he still doesn't understand what her deal is and why she is looking at him like that. He can't shake the feeling that she's completely different from Jing. They spend the evening like this, and as our boy is about to leave, his stepmother invites him to just move in with them and live as a happy family. He quickly declines, saying he needs to live on campus once school starts and is currently staying with his friend. But in his mind, he is more concerned about his stepsister Jing, because he's sure that she would kill him if he stayed here. That's when she offers him a card and tells him to take it. Curious, the boy asks what the card is for, and his stepmother explains that it's an access card for a single dormitory at Sunset College. She mentions that his father told her he likes to live alone, so she prepared the gift for him without asking for his opinion first. But she hopes he'll take it. It looks like a single dormitory is exactly what he needs if he wants to play games without any interruptions. He takes the card key and wonders how his dad knew he needed a single room. He thanks her and calls her Madam, but she takes it the wrong way. She runs her hand through her hair and asks if she really looks that old, telling him he can call her anything but Madam. Seems like he's learning the hard way that every woman, no matter what, is touchy about their age. He heads back to his friend's mansion, and when he gets inside, it's dead silent, meaning Li Xuan is out again. I guess this is just good news for him. With the boost from that hearty dinner, he's all set to dive into his game without any interruptions. He dives back into the game and gives it his all to defeat the ant nest in the dungeon. Once he's done, he scores another symbiotic egg for himself. He checks the stats and reads that it's a mutated immense strength ant, which will give him an innate skill power punch of rank 2. He's not too thrilled, seeing that the attributes are much worse than the last one. Just then, a stinging winged mosquito tries to take a swing at him, but he ducks down just in time to avoid the attack. He feels annoyed by this sudden sneaky attack, but before he can retaliate back, the mosquito comes at him with full throttle. But my guy just dodges this stinky mosquito once again. He is trying to stay vigilant because he knows he has to stay alert if he wants to avoid getting taken out instantly. The mosquito comes at him full throttle, and he seizes the opportunity, and also starts running in the direction of the mosquito. As the monster tries to strike, he blocks it head on. This time, he narrowly escapes with just a slight graze on his cheek. Just as the mosquito is picking up speed, it suddenly vanishes into thin air. Our boy readies his fist, powered up by his immense strength ant gauntlet. Since he can't see the mosquito with his naked eye, he shuts his eyes and quickly senses where the critter is behind him. With his fist ready, he lands a devastating blow that sends the mosquito tumbling down like a rag doll. He leaps from his spot and unleashes his next move, Ash Palm. As the energy intensifies, a huge blast erupts. Even after that brutal blow, the mosquito is still hanging on. But he quickly jumps again and unleashes a barrage of powerful punches on the critter. Finally, after all that effort, the winged mosquito goes down. As the mosquito begins to vanish, its body leaves behind a symbiotic egg. His face lights up with joy at the sight of it. Now he has two options: hatch the egg or fuse it with the mutated immense strength ant's symbiotic egg with a fusion rate of 20%. It looks like he's not exactly thrilled with the low fusion rate the system is offering. Given that the monster he just defeated was an ant, the fusion rate shouldn't be this low compared to the skeleton knight's egg. He feels worried that the symbiotic egg might be wasted if the hatch fails, so he swallows his fear and decides to give it a try. Despite his hesitation, he presses yes. Suddenly, an empty void opens up, beginning to squeeze out his chi. His heart pounds rapidly as the dark red energy envelops him in a creepy, indescribable sensation. It feels like his back is being torn apart by sharp teeth. As the hatching process concludes, he's on the brink of tears, violently coughing up blood. I have a hunch that he's grown a pair of wings on his back, which explains the intense pain he felt there. He's feeling dizzy, not only from the intense blood loss while trying to defeat the mosquito over and over, but also from the real-life effects that left him on the edge. Eventually, exhaustion gets the better of him, and he collapses. His phone starts ringing, but in the next scene, strings of words hover around him, pulling him back to consciousness. Groggily, he gets up, glad that the real-life pain isn't as severe as what he felt in the game. Otherwise, he might not have made it. He smears blood on his phone screen to check his status, dreading the possibility that the hatching might have failed. But to his relief, the egg has successfully hatched. Eager to try out his new abilities, he quickly summons his avatar. When the silver-winged mosquito finally materializes, what he sees leaves him utterly devastated, because it's just a tiny mosquito. His shocked voice echoes through the mansion as he stares at the little critter, completely floored by the underwhelming result. He examines the stats and reads that this thing is a silver-winged mosquito larva, which is classified as a legendary pet. He has no clue what a larva actually entails, but he brushes it off and notes that the attributes are surprisingly poor for a legendary creature, especially considering how ferocious it was when it tried to kill him. Despite its weak attributes, it does look kind of cute. Suddenly, his phone beeps, and the system announces that the silver-winged mosquito is feeling pretty hungry, so he better feed it right away. He's clueless about what this little critter is supposed to eat, but when he presses the yes button to feed it, a system window pops up, asking whether he'd like to feed it the mutated skeleton ant or the mutated immense strength ant. Zhu is frustrated to see that this little critter has such picky tastes. He certainly doesn't want to sacrifice any of his other symbiotic pets for it. He starts grumbling about who designed this trash mosquito that can't simply eat regular monsters from the game. Meanwhile, the little guy, still cute as ever, is drooling and eagerly showing signs of hunger, ready to devour anything to satisfy its appetite. With no other options left, he reluctantly proceeds to sacrifice the symbiotic egg of the mutated immense strength ant. As soon as he presses the button, energy swirls around the little critter as its hunger is finally being fulfilled. Once he's done feeding, he decides to check out the critter's symbiotic form since this baby version isn't likely to be much help in a fight. As the mosquito morphs into its symbiotic form, a pair of wings sprout behind his avatar. He excitedly takes to the air, testing out his newfound ability to fly. The speed is exhilarating, and he feels a rush of thrill from such immense power. The wings grant him impressive agility, although they can't lift him too high. He realizes that while he can maneuver deftly at low altitudes, his flight is limited to just a few meters off the ground. Since he can now fly, it seems pointless to continue hunting ants, so he decides to dive deeper into the depths of the caves, ready to explore what lies ahead. As he ventures deeper, more and more ants start popping up, and the path keeps getting narrower and narrower, with monsters crawling around everywhere. When he finally looks at the scene from a bird's eye view, he sees countless critters, and he's totally lost on how he's going to fight them off. But then he remembers he can fly, so he figures he can just zip right over their heads without getting hurt. Unfortunately, that plan doesn't work out as expected. The little ants quickly band together and form a giant hand, which lashes out at him, swarming him from all sides. Once he is stuck inside this swarm, light starts leaking from the horde of ants. Using his ash palm skill, he obliterates all those pesky ants surrounding him, clearing out the entire area. The impact is so intense that it punches a hole in the ground, and he starts falling into a place where there's nothing but a single boulder. Just when he thinks he's safe, he notices something near the boulder. It doesn't take him long to realize he's stumbled upon an ant nest, and now those critters are heading straight for him. Once he's overrun by the flying insects, his avatar eventually bites the dust, and he's pretty banged up. It's a real shame he can't explore the dungeon any further, as he'll need his silver-winged mosquito to recover before he can use those sweet wings again. His stomach starts rumbling, so he heads to the fridge, only to find it completely empty. Looks like he's got no choice but to head out and grab some food. As he steps outside the city, we notice a car trailing him. Inside, someone reports that their target has left the house and is heading for the main street. They ask if they should move in now. This woman, known as Lisa, while applying some lipstick, replies to her junior that it's too crowded right now. Since Chow asked them to stay undercover, she reassures them that she'll handle the situation. As our boy strolls down the footpath, the girl quickly positions herself in his path, making sure she looks absolutely smoking hot. She's determined to charm him as soon as he lays eyes on her. While he's still walking, completely unaware of what's coming, the lady hides behind a wall, waiting for the perfect moment. Eventually, she steps out and pretends to be clumsy, falling to the ground. Without missing a beat, she puts on a show with fake tears and calls him a handsome fella, asking him to help her up. But our guy, being the Giga Chad he is, just walks right past her without giving her a second glance. This response really ticks her off. What bothers her most is that this brat didn't even acknowledge her beauty. She then stands up and starts chasing him, ready to use her final trump card as a last resort. Meanwhile, our boy is lost in thought, mulling over how easy it must be for people who can fly to enter the lotus pond. However, figuring out how to deal with the blood-striped Buddha heart lotus is still a puzzle he needs to solve. Suddenly, the girl grabs his hand and asks why he's walking so fast. Joe, confused, asks her who she even is. She replies that she's lost and hurt herself when she fell, so she's just asking for a little help. Hearing this, Joe pulls out his phone and dials 911, telling her that help will be on the way soon. But she quickly insists that he put his phone away and just take her home. Joe remains unhinged and says he's heading out for dinner and doesn't have time to waste. Frustration builds up for the lady with every passing second. Her pride is wounded, and she's reached her limit. Deciding she's had enough, she unleashes her powers and lunges at him, ready to knock him out and take him back by force. A violent explosion erupts from their clash, and as the dust settles, the woman is left standing alone while our boy quickly flies up and stands above a signboard. It doesn't take long for him to realize who she is, and in his memory serves right, she's one of the federal agents who were after Jing Daoxian that night. It seems she underestimated him. He's actually more agile than she anticipated. Growing more serious, she starts summoning fire. Meanwhile, our guy dials 911 and reports that he's being attacked. Seeing this, the girl grits her teeth, because if the police see her attacking him, her identity could be exposed, and she doesn't want to attract any unwanted attention. Reluctantly, she starts walking away, telling him that she's letting him off the hook this time. With that, she disappears from view. The boy lets out a sigh of relief and jumps back down, and he is still curious about why the Federation would be after him when he hasn't committed any crime. As he thinks it over, it suddenly dawns on him that he might be mistaken for Jing Daoxian's accomplice. He quickly calls his friend Li Xuan, and when his friend picks up, he sounds genuinely surprised and pleased to see that our boy is actually calling him by his own will. But our boy doesn't waste time catching up, and tells Xuan to find a private place because he has something important to reveal. After a while, once he's explained the situation, Xuan is shocked to hear that he's encountered Jing Daoxian. He also expresses how jealous he is feeling, because he also wants to meet someone as legendary as Jing Daoxian. Looks like our boy made the right call by not telling his friend about the lost Immortal Sutra. Otherwise, he would have been over the moon with excitement. Anyway, Xuan further explains that based on the description our boy gave, he's almost certain that the hyenas are behind this. He explains that hyenas are a special federal organization that deals with things the government can't openly interfere in. He elaborates that hyenas are ruthless and will do anything to achieve their goals, no matter the consequences. They're notorious in the Federation, which is why they're called hyenas. Well, it looks like dealing with these hyenas is going to be really tough. Our boy then asks if he can get him into college ahead of schedule. He further explains that while the hyenas, or the Special Inspection Unit, are very powerful, they can't openly violate the law. Therefore, they'll be even more cautious at Sunset College. Xuan agrees that it's a great idea and teasingly reminds our boy that after all, Luoyan is Ang family territory. If he were to live with the Ang family, no one in the world would dare lay a finger on him. The boy, however, prefers not to discuss the Ang family and tells his friend he'd rather keep that topic off the table. After making that little joke, Xuan reassures him that he'll make sure his friend can get into college ahead of schedule as well. With that, our boy ends the call, and he begins gritting his teeth, clearly annoyed by the sudden trouble surrounding him. All the relief from these troubles boils down to one thing, which is, if only he were powerful enough. The next scene takes us to the Special Inspection Unit of the federal government. There, we find a clearly annoyed senior, laying into Lisa. He's furious because she should have stayed undercover, and he's worried about how he's going to explain the situation to his own superior, who will be calling him soon. Lisa quickly apologizes, saying it's all her fault. She admits she misjudged the situation and as well as our boy's preferences and his strengths. She then puffs out her chest and requests another chance to make things right, promising to deliver positive results this time. But the senior tells her that it's not so easy to get a hold of Joe Wen now. He instructs her to check out some documents, hinting that the situation is more complicated than she realizes. The girl is curious and a bit confused about the documents. The senior explains that he had his teacher dig into the secrets of Ouyang Lan and the Ang family, and everything is laid out in those files. When Lisa opens the file, she's stunned to find that our boy has actually been enrolled in Sunset College ahead of time. What really gets her is that this place used to belong to Ang Jin, so it makes no sense how could the Ang family give it to Joe Wen, who's just an outsider. By the way, if you are curious about what place we are talking about, it's about something called God-bestowed gift, and the Ang family has chosen Joe Wen to receive this thing called God-bestowed gift. I can't deliver any more spoilers, so keep yourself strapped and watch. The senior reassures her that although it sounds crazy, his teacher's intel is solid. He explains that the Ang family used their only chance to switch the candidate to our boy. He's amazed at how everything, from the notorious Jing Daoxian to the Ang family, seems to be pointing to Joe Wen, making things more and more tangled. Meanwhile, our boy suddenly sneezes and wonders if he's catching a cold, but he doesn't realize that he has become the target of some trashy federal agency who is going to nag the hell out of him throughout the series. While holding his backpack, he looks pretty relieved to have finally made it into the prestigious Sunset College. He looks at the key card his stepmom gave him. It says, 4 Seasons Garden, which must be where his dorm room is. After finally reaching the building he's been looking for, he climbs the stairs, swipes his key card, and steps into his room. Honestly, it looks more like a 5-star hotel suite than a dorm room where, let's be real, most students live for the chance to indulge in anime and junk food. In any case, this marks the beginning of his new life at college. When he opens his backpack, he realizes he didn't pack nearly enough for this new chapter of life, just some clothes and not much else. So he decides it's time for a shopping trip. He pulls out the campus map and starts looking for shops. As he's checking his phone, a girl starts descending the stairs. He looks up and sees Ang Jing. He's surprised to see her and asks if she lives upstairs. The girl seems a bit shocked but doesn't bother to respond. She just pouts and walks away, ignoring him completely. As she descends, our boy has no clue why she's so angry, but he decides not to dig into it and pretends he didn't see her. Once outside the dormitories, he checks his phone again and finds it odd that the shops he expected to be there aren't. He wonders if he might have taken a wrong turn. The street is completely empty, with no one around to ask for directions. Suddenly, he hears an unexpected meow. He looks around and realizes someone is playing with a cat. He quickly follows the sound and notices that the male voice playing with the kitten sounds familiar. It's no surprise the voice is familiar, as the person playing with the cats is Gu Dian, the same guy who lost to our boy in a punch bet. It's surprising to see this fella, who is supposed to be the most terrifying guy, getting all cozy with these little creatures. Well, this comes as a great shock to our boy, who never imagined seeing this guy playing with kittens. He musters up the courage and calls out to Gu Dian, but a sudden silence falls over the area. Gu Dian quickly releases the kittens and transforms back into his usual terrifying self. He warns our boy that if he tells anyone about this, he's in serious trouble. With anger bulging in his eyes, he gives Joe a fierce look, and our poor guy, feeling the heat, quickly says he didn't see anything and was just looking around for shops. He adds that if Gu Dian can point him in the right direction, he'll leave immediately. Baldy appears to be pleased by our boy's response, so he retracts his hand back. Just as he's walking away, he tells our boy Hat this is the old campus. He advises him to walk along this road, where he'll eventually find the guards who can show him the way. Gu Dian stops for a moment, shoots one last glare with his bloodshot eyes, and warns our boy to leave the kittens alone as well. With that, he turns and walks away. Our guy stays behind, gently patting the cute kittens. He reflects on how, after the dimensional storm, humans can now form contracts with creatures from other universes, which are more obedient and possess magical powers. Most people no longer care about weak local pets. So it's surprising to see someone as tough and intimidating as Gu Dian having a soft spot for these little creatures. Once he's back in the dormitories, our guy feels like he's on a losing streak. He's pretty annoyed that he keeps getting his butt handed to him in the game for no apparent reason. He pinches his thumb to draw more blood, and his avatar reappears in the game, once again standing on the same stairs where he keeps dying after getting his innards twisted. There's some mysterious force between him and the small Buddhist temple that seems to kill anyone who dares to step forward. He finds it odd that despite several attempts to approach the temple, he's met with instant death every time, even when he tries to fly without touching the ground. No matter what he does, he's killed as soon as he enters this area, and he's tried everything he can think of, but he does not seem to cross these stairs. Since it's a game, there should be a limit, no matter how difficult things get. Even though the Skeleton Knight and mosquitoes were very strong, he was able to figure out how to defeat them eventually. However, this time he's getting killed without any warnings. It's no longer a boss fight. It feels more like facing a sealed door he can't enter without the key. If he wants to access the small Buddhist temple, he needs to find the corresponding key. But in Buddha City, he can only explore the Lotus Pond right now, and there's nothing there. Reflecting on the meditation skill he acquired, he decides to give it a try. The skill, which he got in Buddha City, doesn't improve attack speed or defenses, and it consumes chi to maintain the state. With his meditation skill activated, he starts descending the stairs again. As soon as he reaches the bottom, he jumps over the ground, and this time, he survives. The sight of surviving the jump leaves him overjoyed, and he proudly strides into the small Buddhist temple, thrilled that he can now explore it. Or so he thought. Activating the meditation skill is consuming a massive amount of ki, and he's about to get screwed over. Eventually, he dies again, but summons his blood avatar back, only to be thwarted once more as his Kwai drains at lightning speed. He frustratingly pinches his thumb to draw blood and summons his avatar again. This time, he runs like a maniac, determined to rush through the chi draining area as fast as possible. But before he can reach the other side, his ki bar depletes again. Not giving up, he pinches his finger, letting a drop of blood fall. He reflects on how his speed isn't quite fast enough to get him through to the small Buddhist temple, so he starts to consider using the mosquito instead. He is feeling pretty smug after activating the wings, and he is pretty sure that he's finally going to make it. But then, just as quickly, his smugness evaporates as his chi depletes even faster. Sure, the wings increase his speed, but they also drain his chi at a ridiculous rate, especially when combined with the meditation skill. He grudgingly finally admits that it's impossible to get through this area with just a rank 7 meditation skill. The only option left is to use skills at higher ranks. He decides that maybe he should explore the Lotus Pond again, hoping to find something useful. Just as he's about to set off, his phone rings. When he picks it up, it's Li Xuan on the other end. Xuan casually tells him to come to the Lotus Pond and watch the show. Zhou gets curious to hear this and asks what's so interesting about it. Xuan just looks straight ahead, where we see our boy's stepsister is standing against a gorilla-like guy, and cryptically tells him that he'll understand when he gets there. As she stands there, murmurs ripple through the crowd. People are saying that she had already reached legendary level before she even enrolled, and the guy standing against her is Yang Lu, a 3rd level legendary figure. Apparently, this gorilla claimed he would kill the Buddha Heart Lotus as a gift for her. She glances at the flower and, with her usual swagger, tells him not to waste his breath on something as mundane as flowers. She's confident that he's just all bark and no bite and couldn't possibly defeat the blood-striped Buddha Heart Lotus. Her remark infuriates Yang Lu, who feels humiliated by her dismissal. On the other hand, Xuan is impressed to learn that the flower's actual name is the blood-striped Buddha heart lotus, which confirms that she has thoroughly investigated the monster. We then also see this lackey, Miantu, from earlier chapters. He points out that Yang Lu is trying to impress the Ang family, which is why he's putting on this show. Xuan points out that while the Yang family is famous, they are nothing compared to the Ang family. Heck, even the Yang family's business relies on the Ang family, and Ang Jing would never be interested in someone like Yang Lu. The lackey agrees, adding that the only person truly worthy of her is Li Xuan himself. But the boss quickly shuts his lackey down, saying he's not interested in Ang Jing at all. After all, he's not the type to clap cheeks of his friend's sister, and that friend, of course, is our boy. When our boy finally strolls into the scene, he looks at his stepsister and asks Xuan if he really called him here just to show off his sister. The playboy just smirks and says that's not the main event. He points out that his sister has an admirer, and as her brother, it's his right to check out the man who's fallen head over heels for her. Meanwhile, Yang Lu is seething with anger after the humiliating rejection from our stepsister. He's confident that once he takes down the blood-striped Buddha heart lotus, he'll make her swallow her words and accept his gift. But the girl dismisses his promise as pointless and tells him to stop humiliating himself. That's the last straw for Yang Lu. He summons his pets, and 2 white eagle-like birds appear in the sky. Miantu is awestruck to see these legendary-level silver-eyed eagles, and there are 2 of them no less. The cocky Yang Lu barks orders to his pets, and they quickly zoom towards the lotus flower. The lotus flower does not sit idly either, and fires a red laser again, smashing directly into one of the eagles. Yang Lu just laughs it off, saying that such puny tricks can't hold back his pets. As those eagles disperse that red blood laser attack, they strike back at the flower, which leaves Miantu awestruck once again. He is blown away by the fact that those feathers are immune to blood erosion. I guess it's no wonder they're at the legendary level. By now, he is pretty sure that Buddha Heart Lotus might actually be at risk of being plucked out after all. But just then, our boy throws in his 2 cents, saying that it's not going to be that simple, and that the battle is far from over. As the eagles continue to scratch at the formidable petals, the lotus flower begins to awaken. The petals unfurl, and the eagles quickly retreat. The flower gives the pesky monsters a cold, menacing look, sending a chill down Yang Lu's spine. Seems like it's clear to him that he's bitten off more than he can chew. Xuan explains that, in theory, most of the lotus creatures are weak, but this one is a completely different species. However, it seems this cocky gorilla isn't ready to back down without a fight. He quickly turns his eagles into fiery beasts, which are resembling the reincarnation of phoenixes. With their fiery forms, they charge at the lotus flower at lightning speed, deploying their golden claw ability. But the flower quickly hides behind a red crimson shield, stopping the phoenixes before they can deliver any devastating damage. The gorilla is stunned to see that the flower even has a defensive key fighting skill. But that is when he also realizes that the blood shield only defends against attacks directly around it, so he decides to keep the flower occupied with his phoenixes, while he sends another phoenix eagle to attack from above, where the flower is unguarded. Our boy quickly realizes that the gorilla is about to attack from above, and this triggers a memory of his past game experience, where the monster devoured him from above. He screams that it's a literal trap. But before the gorilla can make sense of what he's saying, his eagle has already reached the mouth of the lotus. The monster's giant mouth, lined with sharp teeth, opens wide, and in a split second, one of the fiery eagles is gulped down in a single chomp. The flower lets out a satisfying burp after having a roasted bird for dinner. The onlookers are stunned to see this horrifying sight, and Yang Lu just lost one of his precious eagles in one fell swoop. Even Yang is baffled by what just happened. He quickly recalls his last remaining familiar, and all he can do now is grit his teeth in frustration. That's when the guy starts strutting toward our boy, towering over him like a big shot. With his usual swagger, he asks how in the world our boy knew it was a trap. Well, Joe can't exactly spill the beans that he's already battled this beast in the game, but thankfully, Miantu jumps in and says, "Of course Joe knew it was a trap. After all, he is ranked second in the real combat test of Guida province." The gorilla just laughs it off, and Miantu just doesn't let it slide. So he asks this cocky guy, "What's so funny, huh? Don't you feel even a little regret for losing your silver-eyed eagle? If it were me, I'd have dug a grave and crawled into it out of sheer embarrassment." Yang Lu gets pretty ticked off and demands to see how the guy ranked second is going to take down the lotus. Miantu confidently responds that Joe can handle it with ease, and it's going to be a piece of cake for him, unlike Yang Lu, who's just made a fool of himself in front of everyone. Meanwhile, our guy stays silent, as he is not sure what to say. That's when his stepsister comes rushing in. She gets right up in his face and asks if he can actually take down the blood-striped Buddha heart lotus. Once again, our boy isn't sure what to say. As much as he hates to admit it, he hasn't actually defeated the blood-striped Buddha in the game, and the lotus here is showing off some moves that didn't appear in the game either, but with her sharp gaze boring into him, and he doesn't want to look like a coward by admitting he can't handle it. so he just clenches his fists in frustration. Meanwhile, the gorilla starts chuckling and points out how Joe looks pretty scared, saying that talking is the only thing he seems good at. That's when Li Xuan chimes in, and he expresses his desire to join our boy to defeat this monster. The gorilla is pretty startled by this unexpected development, because he didn't expect the famous playboy of the Li family to get involved. But then he starts grinning, thinking that even the silver-eyed eagles couldn't handle this. So they're just daydreaming if they think they can take down the monster. With that, the gorilla agrees and says he's looking forward to seeing their plan in action. A little while later, the crowd is gathered on one side, while our boy and his two allies are on the other side. Li Xuan is visibly pissed that Miantu provoked the gorilla and dragged them into this challenge. But our boy reminds him that pinching this dude's cheeks isn't going to help now, because they have already accepted the challenge, so they better focus on their next plan. Joe is pretty confident, even though his blood avatar wasn't enough to take down the monster before. He's sure that with all three of them working together, the outcome might surprise everyone, especially since Li Xuan has two legendary level creatures on his side, giving them a better shot at victory. The only hitch is figuring out how to get into the lotus pond. Joe admits he can't rely on his skeleton ant alone, and can't protect all three of them during the fight. Zhuan also points out that he doesn't have any flying creatures, and his new sky conch can barely manage to stay airborne. That's when Miantu steps up, placing a mask over his face and saying, "Leave this to me." He summons his pet, and suddenly a giant turtle pops out of the sky, plummeting into the acidic water. As it floats there, it creates a solid platform on its shell, giving them a way to stand above the acid. Li Xuan is pretty fascinated to see that even Miantu has a mortal-level symbiotic egg. At first, he thought only Joe had pets of that caliber. Anyway, the three of them ride atop the giant turtle and head towards the flower. Miantu tells his friends that they should go fight the twisted flower, while he commands his dragon-scale turtle to support them from the sidelines. With that, both Joe and his friends start unleashing their pet powers. Then, my guy jumps into the sky, summons his skeleton ant, and hops onto its back. Li Xuan doesn't waste any time showing off either, and quickly begins to transform, leaving the crowd going absolutely wild when they see that even the notorious third son of the Li family has a legendary level creature. Our playboy proudly dons his dark armor and gets ready to dive into the hack-and-slash action. Meanwhile, the cocky gorilla is fuming, seeing that these three might actually defeat the monster after all, thanks to their powerful pets. His stepsister watches intently, not missing a moment. It looks like our armored playboy is struggling to keep his balance on his conch, so Joe tells Miantu to keep an eye on Li Xuan since the floating ability of the conch isn't very flexible. They gotta make sure their friend does not fall into the acid. Miantu nods and says, "Leave it to me." With that, both of our boys charge at the monster. The Buddha quickly shoots out crimson projectiles at the party, but Joe tells his ant to block them. The skeleton ant promptly rises up and takes the crimson projectiles head-on, protecting them from the attack. That's when the black-armored guy spots his chance and slashes his sword at the monster. The flower retaliates with its crimson fluid-like attack again. But Xuan's slash cuts straight through that crimson stuff and hits the flower right in the face. Meanwhile, Zhou's ant lets out a powerful roar, and spikes begin to emerge from the curb, slamming directly into the flower's body. But this flowery jerk remains totally unfazed. It quickly pulls out its crimson stuff again and obliterates those spikes like they're nothing but cucumbers. Seeing the old trick, Joe wonders if the flower is trying to lure them into attacking from above. But then the playboy jumps in, saying they don't need to do that, because he's confident they can take this monster down from the front. He charges his sword and starts vanishing into thin air. Meanwhile, the monster isn't just sitting around. It lets out a massive roar, and a tornado-like force starts swirling in its mouth. The heavy air pressure makes it tough for our boy to get close, but the armored guy holds his ground. Once he's done charging up his sword, he comes crashing down on the monster like a goddamn meteor, and that single attack obliterates the lotus flower from the inside. Just as the petals of the flower start burning down, a frog sitting inside it spits out some weird stuff from its mouth. It's headed straight for our playboy, who's totally exhausted after his big attack and is just falling, like a sitting duck. But before it can hit, we hear our hero unleash his power punch. Flames erupt, completely obliterating that dark stuff. Joe threw his punch from a distance, and the remnants of the dark energy shattered the conch Xuan was riding. Joe quickly tells Miantu to catch Li Xuan while he takes care of the stinky toad. The lackey quickly agrees, and our boy darts forward, leaping off his skeleton ant with his punch charged up with fiery energy. The toad spits out more of its gooey stuff, but our boy easily sidesteps it like it's nothing. By now, the toad is pretty sure that he is screwed, so it braces itself for the impact. Joe's massive explosion takes it down, and when the flames finally settle, there's nothing left of the toad, other than the splatter of blood. Suddenly, Joe notices that Xuan is about to fall into the acidic water of the pool. The playboy is convinced that Miantu is intentionally letting him fall, and it's pretty clear when Miantu smugly says Juan deserves to fall inside this acid. Meanwhile, the stepsister is ready to step in if things get messy. But before she can, my guy swoops in and grabs his friend just in time, preventing him from hitting the acid. Playboy feels pretty embarrassed that Joe had to save him once again. Once they land on the turtle's dragon scale shell, Miantu starts yelling at Joe, accusing him of hiding another symbiotic pet. But our boy just sighs in disappointment, reminding Miantu that he only had one job, and he failed miserably. That's when Xuan gives Miantu a solid smack to the face, telling him he's a terrible actor. The slap sends Miantu tumbling, and he asks why he was betrayed. That single slap has messed up this bastard's face, and he explains that our playboy can't defeat his brother Lee Mobai because Mobai has already bought off everyone around here. But then, Miantu pulls another sneaky move and shatters the dragon crystal that Joe and Xuan are standing on. He makes it clear that if he can't take down the playboy alone, he'll gladly drag everyone down with him into the acid. As the rubble starts sinking into the acid, things look grim for both of our boys. But just in time, they're saved by a mysterious blob that encapsulates them before they can fall. And who's behind this rescue? Well, none other than Joe's stepsister. The next scene takes us to the investigation office at Sunset College. There, both boys are grilled by the officer, and after taking in all the info, the officer tells them to just leave. Once they're outside, Li Xuan is feeling utterly disheartened, wondering why everyone seems to be gunning for him. That is when our boy asks him why his brother has such a vendetta against him, and why he's going to such great lengths to kill him. Li Xuan explains that he and his brother, Li Mobai, have been almost estranged since their eldest brother passed away. While Mobai is busy running the family business with their father, he himself been living the easy life. Joe's curious why Mobai is so set on taking him down if it's not about power or wealth. Xuan says it's not about anything so trivial. Our boy presses for more details, and Xuan suggests they find a private spot to chat. There might be spies around. A while later, we see a bunch of cola cans scattered around, and it looks like they're back in Joe's dorm, and our boy is not too thrilled to see his friend littering all over in his room. Wen kicks off the conversation by asking if Joe knows the difference between creatures of different levels. He explains that they're categorized into mortal, legendary, epic, and mythical, and the higher the level, the bigger the gap. Eventually, the power gap becomes so huge between the mortal and mythical class that the mortal class is like ants compared to the mythical creatures. So, with that in mind, he asks his friend how the humans, who are in the mortal class, killed the very first mythic class creatures despite this huge power difference. Joe cuts to the chase, pointing out that all this is well documented in the books. He explains that after 3 days and nights, the original 6 epic heroes of the Federation managed to kill it. But Xuan dismisses this as hot air, reminding Joe that even with the biggest strength gap, 100 epic heroes wouldn't have made it, let alone 6. The real reason the mythical creatures were defeated was because humans had mythical symbiotic creatures on their side. Joe is shocked to his core and can't make sense of it. He questions how they could obtain mythical symbiotic pets before even killing the mythical creatures, since typically, the eggs can only be hatched after the creatures are defeated. Li Xuan explains that this is a god-bestowed gift. He reveals that someone bestowed the power to kill mythical creatures onto the 6 heroes, and that power was in the form of a larva of the mythical creature. Joe dismisses the idea as a bunch of groundless legends, but Xuan explains that the Federation has set up a top-secret department to handle and hide the deeds of the 6 heroes, and most people aren't aware of it. He further explains that his department is responsible for selecting specific individuals to receive the god-bestowed gift, just like the 6 heroes did. Joe starts to seriously consider if this god-bestowed thing might actually be true, though he's unsure why Li Xuan is sharing this information with him. But then everything starts to click in Joe's mind. He asks if it's really true, and the playboy proudly confirms it. He reveals that his father has appointed him as the first heir to receive the god-bestowed gift in his family, and the only way Li Mobai can claim the qualification rights is if he kills Li Xuan. The next morning, we see the blue head sleeping soundly while Joe is busy twiddling with his phone. He remembers the warning Xuan gave him last night about being careful because he's messed up Mobai's plans more than once by saving Xuan's life, and now Mobai might be gunning for him too. All these thoughts are fueling Joe's drive to dive deeper into the game and get stronger. As he's totally hooked on playing, a system window pops up with a notification, which says that silver-winged mosquito is really hungry. Joe can't help but feel frustrated and mutters to the system, "Do you even know how much a symbiotic egg costs?" But at the end, he realizes that he has no choice but to feed it if he wants to grow his little buddy. The only way to acquire eggs is by taking down these monsters, who tremble in fear as they see Joe approaching with his bloodshot eyes. In the college, a crowd of students gathers to watch footage from yesterday, where our boys took down the monster with impressive ease. The students are amazed by Li Xuan's legendary creatures, especially since they've heard he's only at the ordinary level. Joe's performance as a supporting role also garners respect, and many think that if their third teammate hadn't betrayed them, they could have destroyed the core of the Lotus. Girls are buzzing about that fight as well, particularly captivated by how charming Li Xuan looked while fighting. They turn to Wei Yang, who is Li Xuan's sister by the way, and ask if she can bring her brother to meet them sometime. But it seems like Wei Yang is busy watching her own love interest, who is our boy of course. She smiles as she sees him in action on the video, clearly enjoying the show. In the Federal Investigation Unit, the team's glued to the footage of Joe Wen's battle. They're pretty blown away by how he dodged that poison toad's attack and landed a punch that took the creature out in one hit. Lisa chimes in, saying that Joe Wen's physical skills alone can't explain that kind of move. She figures he's probably using a top-tier key spell. But, she adds, the records show he's been practicing bitter meditation, which isn't exactly cutting edge. The senior investigator agrees with Lisa's observations but adds a layer of intrigue. He recounts that while he was in Guida province, he caught a brief glimpse of Joe Wen's abilities. During that time, Joe's skin had a slight jade luster, a sign that he was practicing bitter meditation. Now, that feature has completely disappeared, which suggests he may have abandoned the practice. Lisa asks if the senior suspects that our boy is not pursuing bitter meditation after years of dedication, and if so, who might have provided him with a higher level key spell, which forced him to abandon the bitter meditation. The senior pauses for a moment, then drops two names which pop up in his mind. The first one is the Ang family, and the second one is undoubtedly Jing Daoxian. Well, we all know that it's Jing Daoxian who gave our boy the chi technique known as the Lost Immortal Sutra. The old man can feel his own technique weakening, which only means our boy is awakening his own powers. Back at the headquarters, the senior explains that our boy met his stepmother, Wu Yanglan, recently, and even if she had given him a new chi spell, there wouldn't have been enough time for him to master it. So, if they rule out the Ang family, the only real suspect left is Jing Daoxian. The senior then orders Lisa to charge Joe Wen with being an accomplice of Jing Daoxian, and to apply for a cross-district arrest warrant, because it's finally the time they interrogate our boy face-to-face. Lisa agrees immediately, and as soon as she pulls up the system window, she opens up Joe Wen's entire profile. She's really looking forward to catching him and giving him a taste of what's coming. The woman then asks if the Ang family will protect our boy in college. The senior reassures her that as long as they get the warrant, they won't have any reason to protect him under federal law. Plus, since both Ang Tianzhou and Ang Jin have been messing with him, it's clear they don't want Joe Wen to fight for the God-bestowed gift. Maybe they never really wanted to protect him in the first place. We then see our stepsister again, looking a bit hesitant before entering Joe Wen's apartment. She stands there, reflecting on past memories. She recalls asking her mom why she chose our boy to be the candidate of the God-bestowed gift. She admits he's talented, but talent alone isn't enough to make him succeed. Besides, he's a gaming nerd, always glued to his phone whenever he gets a chance to play. But that's when her stunningly attractive mom, with a great figure and all, admits that she's already made her decision and would rather argue than change her mind. In the present moment, this is really irritating the girl. She's determined to prove to her mom that she's way better than him. She eventually decides to knock on the door, but before she can do much, Joe opens it himself, still glued to his game. It takes him a moment to realize Ang Jin is standing on his doorstep. The arrogant stepsister then explains that her sun shooting spell is legit and that he can practice it however he wants. Joe Wen is confused about what her deal is and whether she's just here to brag about her spell. In his mind, he thinks even if he wanted to practice it, he wouldn't be able to learn it since he already has the Lost Immortal Sutra. She then asks if he still doubts her. If he does, she tells him to show her the flash drive to their father, and he will surely verify it. Joe Wen lets out a sigh at this and finally asks why she even gave him the spell in the first place. The girl replies that it was to prove she's better than him. She then asks if he wasn't upset when she defeated him in high school. Our boy flashes a charming smile and says not at all. In fact, he kind of admires her for it. This annoys her, and she tries to remind him that she defeated him publicly, so it makes sense he'd want to bounce back and get revenge. She explains that she's seen his abilities at the Lotus Pond, and believes he'll reach the legendary level after 3 months of practicing the sun shooting spell. She'll allow him to practice it, but until then, she plans to challenge him again. Our boy simply asks if he can give up now, admitting defeat. But this stubborn lady just gets even more annoyed and tells him he must fight her again. She's fuming at the top of her head, completely baffled by how her mother ended up choosing this guy. Eventually, she withdraws her hand and decides to head back to her dormitory. She offers Joe some chi crystals as a prize, saying he's welcome to take any he wants since she won't be going easy on him this time. Joe stands there in silence, reflecting on how she's a talented girl, recognized by the Federation, who reached legendary level at just 13. It doesn't make sense to him why she's so determined to fight him. Well, it seems like this idiot is clearly still in the dark about being chosen for the God-bestowed gift as the Ang family's candidate. Nonetheless, he grabs the garbage bags Li Xuan littered last night, takes out the trash, and returns to his game. He's still glued to the screen and the action is intense. It looks like he's finally defeated the Lotus Buddha flower, and his ant skeleton has snagged the Buddha Heart Lotus egg. He quickly retrieves the egg from its pet, feeling anxious as he opens the stats tab. Li Xuan had mentioned that the symbiotic heart of the Buddha Heart Lotus is very useful. Meanwhile, his silver-winged mosquito larva is starving and will soon disappear if it doesn't eat anything in time. He lets out a defeated sigh and decides to feed the little critter first. As soon as he presses the button, the larva begins to undergo evolution, bathed in bright, flashy lights. Joe Wen anxiously hopes that his larva will get bigger, but in the end, he's disappointed to see that the larva remains just as small as before. He's already fed it 2 ordinary symbiotic eggs, but it's still a larva. He wonders if ordinary symbiotic eggs are less effective for legendary creatures. It's tough to get a legendary symbiotic egg, and it would still take him a lot of effort, even if he fights Skeleton Knight over and over. The drop rate for legendary eggs is so low that it is going to take him forever to grab one. He leans back on his bed, feeling defeated. He reflects on how he still has his sister to deal with, and if he doesn't reach the legendary level within 3 months, he's in serious trouble. He then remembers that thanks to the Lost Immortal Sutra, he can't even practice the sun-shooting spell. He's still in the dark about how the sutra works and how he can advance further. As he beats himself up over his lousy luck, a knock on the door grabs his attention. When he opens it, he sees the familiar face of Gao Yang. Our boy asks what's up, and Gao Yang says he's here to apologize. This raises a red flag for Joe, who is unsure of the real reason for the visit. Gao Yang continues his yammering, saying there will be no discord or conflict, and he wants to apologize for the past. He simply wants to forget their past grievances and extend his hand toward Joe, taking the first step toward their friendship. Our boy accepts the gesture of friendship and proceeds to close the door, mentioning that he's in the middle of a game. But Gao Yang tells him to wait because there's actually one more thing he wants to say. He then takes our boy somewhere and introduces him to his friend Haifeng, saying he's brought Joe Wen here. Haifeng, a newcomer, just smiles and thanks Gao Yang for bringing our boy here. Suddenly, Haifeng moves with such incredible speed that our boy can barely see him. He appears in front of Joe Wen in the form of a monstrous creature, but my guy remains cool as a cucumber and tells Haifeng that if he really wants to fight, they can just settle it in the arena, so there's no need to make a mess here. Haifeng then snaps his fingers, and the dark red creature begins to disappear. He compliments our boy on how he remained unusually calm and sharp. As the dark form disappears, we see Haifeng has arrived with 2 of his lackeys. He begins by apologizing for his previous impertinence and introduces himself as Hu Haifeng. Without wasting any moment, he cuts to the chase and invites Joe to join their team and help them take down the blood-striped Buddha Heart Lotus together. It seems like our boy probably didn't completely destroy the core of the flower last time, which is why the lotus is still around. Anyway, he asks why he's being chosen for this, and Haifeng explains that he studied the video of the battle between him and the Buddha Heart Lotus. While Li Xuan performed brilliantly, Haifeng found our boy's command and judgment even more intriguing. He points out that the academy has people stronger than Li Xuan. However, what made their last fight valuable was Joe Wen's overall observation skills, and how he anticipated Li Xuan's position and dealt with the poison toad at the perfect moment. Haifeng goes on to say that if their third member hadn't betrayed them, Joe would have won the fight. He further reassures our boy that he won't have to deal with the Lotus Pond mess again. All he needs to do is guide them and manage their symbiotic pets from the sidelines. Even with all the chatting and explaining, Joe still turns them down. In his head, he's more focused on how to beat the boss in his game than on directing a bunch of cocky seniors. He's almost got the Lotus figured out and plans to tackle it himself eventually. Gao Yang tells him to think it over because Haifeng and the other 2 seniors are at legendary level in the academy. Joining them could be a big win, and with their help, victory could come pretty quick. But our boy is not having it and refuses again, which really gets on Gao Yang's nerves. He thinks to himself that if it weren't for Haifeng, he wouldn't have even talked to this annoying brat. Just then, Haifeng stops our boy and reminds him that he doesn't have to refuse so quickly. He asks him what he wants and assures him that they can arrange it if it's reasonable. Joe Wen turns around, and he startles these both of thugs by saying he wants a legendary symbiotic egg. Gao Yang is furious at this bold demand coming from his junior. But despite Gao's irritation, our boy stands his ground and happily states that he'll join the team if they offer him a legendary symbiotic egg. Gao Yang is clearly annoyed, and he further gets cocky and grabs Joe Wen by the collar. He tells him not to push his luck because his role in this partnership is minor. All he is doing is just directing the symbiotic pets, which doesn't warrant the legendary egg he's asking for. Xu Wen tells Cao Yang to cool his jets. He makes it clear that it's entirely up to them. If they're willing to give him what he wants, then they're good. Otherwise, no hard feelings. Just then, Haifeng jumps into the scene and asks our boy if he has any specific requirements for the legendary symbiotic egg he wants. Joe Wen shrugs, saying he doesn't have anything particular in mind. After all, he just wants a legendary egg to feed his pet, though he does not say it out loud. Haifeng then tosses an egg toward our boy and asks if that will be satisfactory. Well, Joe Wen is clearly pleased with the offer and has no further demands, because getting a legendary symbiotic egg for free is more than enough for him. Haifeng extends his hand for a fist bump to seal the deal, and Joe Wen quickly reciprocates, finalizing their agreement. As they part ways, Gao Yang turns to his friend and questions how he could give away the flaming toxic bee's symbiotic egg so easily. He doesn't understand why he trusts Joe Wen so much. Haifeng reminds his friend that after watching the video of the battle, he felt our boy had something special, which is almost as if he'd fought the Lotus before. Gao Yang is a bit shocked to hear this, but Haifeng just walks off, telling his friend not to stress. The egg is now just part of the deal, serving as insurance against their failure. Back in his room, our boy summons his winged mosquito. Once the little critter appears, he flashes the legendary symbiotic egg he snagged for dinner. Without wasting any time, he pops the egg right into his pet's mouth. Immediately, a giant blob of aura and fire surrounds the little guy as he begins to evolve. When the transformation is done, our winged mosquito emerges with sharp green eyes, a needle-like sting, and an overall bigger size, which is way bigger than it was before. Joe finds it fascinating that this evolution merged the properties of the flaming toxic bee's attributes, probably because both are insects. He then checks the stats and notices that the larva tag is finally gone, and his mosquito has finally matured. But what really shocks him is how much the stats have improved, almost exceeding the limits of a legendary creature. On top of that, it's got a new skill called Magic Light Sting, which shoots a long, high-speed energy sting capable of piercing through targeted enemies. Joe Wen can't help but flash a grin at his newly evolved pet. With its awesome upgrades, he's feeling pretty confident it can definitely take down the blood-striped Buddha Heart Lotus. He quickly drips some blood onto his screen, summoning his blood avatar, along with his upgraded winged mosquito. Without wasting any time, he sends his mosquito charging at the Lotus. The Lotus isn't about to just sit there and take hits. It conjures up that crimson stuff and tries to blast the mosquito out of the air. But the mosquito zips through the attack with lightning speed, almost too fast to see. As the mosquito gets close, it's just a hair away from piercing the flower's eye with its sharp claw. But in a split second, the sneaky Lotus ducks into the water, leaving the mosquito wondering where it went. Just then, the mosquito notices something coming up from below the ground. The Lotus tries to catch it off guard by attacking from underneath, but the mosquito dodges the sneaky petals and makes a quick escape. The mosquito then turns his attention back to the flower and ramps up its descent momentum by using its silver wing attack, aiming directly at the flower. The Lotus tries to block the attack with its crimson substance, but the mosquito isn't finished yet. With lightning speed, it circles back, slicing through the crimson barrier with its sharp wings. The Lotus looks quite frustrated, and it finally explodes, revealing a toad inside, just like we saw in the real-life battle. And as expected, the toad quickly starts throwing gooey, sticky sludge at the mosquito, but the little guy dodges everything with ease. It quickly counters with its sting attack, sending a sharp crimson needle straight into the toad. The toad pops like a balloon as soon as the needle hits its target, and another sting from the mosquito obliterates the core of the Lotus, causing a massive explosion in the aftermath. Just as the haze starts to clear, the mosquito makes sure to grab the crystal from the smoky explosion. Meanwhile, our boy watches with awe, still doubting if his winged mosquito's skill has truly become that powerful. His pet returns with the prize in its mouth and quickly spits out the demonic crystal of the Lotus. Joe doesn't waste a moment and grabs up the red crystal. He is feeling pretty confident that the QI fighting skill of this blood-striped Buddha Heart Lotus might be the key to entering that small Buddhist temple. He absorbs the crystal, and this time, the absorption process starts to affect him in real life as well. It feels like a searing heat trying to cook him alive, but Joe endures the pain like a champ. Moments later, the system announces that the demonic crystal of the blood-striped Buddha Heart Lotus has been absorbed, and his original skill, meditation, has been upgraded to a stronger skill known as blood meditation. Once the process is over, Joe Wen's body is still emitting steam. He rinses his sweaty shirt, giving it a solid twist to wring out the water. After that, he activates his newly acquired blood meditation skill. As expected, the QE consumption rate with blood meditation is slower than with regular meditation, allowing it to last for about half an hour. He is now feeling pretty confident that this skill will help him explore the small Buddhist temple like a pro. Without wasting any time, he dives back into the game. He finally crosses the stairs of the underground Buddha city, making his way with renewed vigor, showing no signs of exhaustion. He's feeling happy that this enhanced meditation skills is helping him resist the power of this area. After a few minutes of running, he finally reaches the main entrance of the small Buddhist temple. He's feeling pretty nervous before going in because he's not sure what kind of monsters he might run into. But he goes in anyway. After looking around for a bit, he's kind of weirded out that there aren't any dimensional creatures around. Then he spots a slab on the other side with some Chinese writing on it. And the title on the slab says it's a short sutra on perfect wisdom. That is when he recalls that the large sutra on perfect wisdom is a well-known thing. According to legend, a Buddhist discovered it during a dimensional storm, and it was ranked as one of the 2 greatest QE spell arts in Buddhism. He is sure that this short sutra on perfect wisdom must also be a spell too. As soon as he tries to read the inscription, the words on the slab start twisting and wrapping around, and he gets hit with a brutal headache. It feels like someone's trying to scramble his brain like eggs. He grabs his head in pain, and suddenly something starts shining brightly in the middle of his avatar's chest. In the next moment, the immense pressure he was feeling vanishes, and he notices that the flow velocity of the Immortal Sutra has slowed down. The pressure is gone, and he's no longer feeling any discomfort as he tries to read the inscription. Just as he's trying to make sense of everything around him, he quickly notices his ki bar is depleting. He hasn't even entered the Buddhist hall yet, so he starts running without wasting any time. Once he's standing outside the small Buddhist temple, he opens the door and spots a giant statue with 3 Buddha faces. He's not even sure if a 3-faced Buddha is a real thing in Buddhism. But as soon as he steps inside, his avatar starts to twist. And just like that, the game is over. He's dead again, without any warning or obvious reason. Looks like he'll need to dig deeper to figure out the rules before entering the temple. At least this experience taught him a bit about what those predecessors went through to gain their power. They really risked their lives, and he's starting to admire them for that. Even with the help of blood meditation, he still couldn't enter the Buddhist hall. But the fact that he didn't see any dimensional creatures suggests that getting into the temple must have something to do with that stone tablet. He's pretty sure that the tablet is some kind of chi spell, but since he has already practiced the Lost Immortal Sutra, he knows he can't practice another chi spell right now. Still, he decides to memorize the sutra written on it. Surprisingly, he's memorizing this script much better than the Lost Immortal Sutra. Once he's halfway through memorizing it, he decides to leave the small Buddhist temple's vicinity before his chi runs out. He plans to come back and finish reading it once his chi is replenished. He spends the entire day like this, yawning and grinding his ass away in the game. By the end of it, he's finally memorized the entire sutra. Suddenly, light starts radiating from him, and he's absolutely blown away by the new kind of chi circulating in his core. The only thing he can think is that this must be the short sutra on perfect wisdom he just memorized. He looks at his hand in his real life, and can also feel this new chi spell even though he hasn't practiced it. It's automatically circulating through his body, according to his memory. He has no clue what's going on, but he's too exhausted to delve into these mysteries right now. So he decides to hit the hay and will figure out what's happening once he wakes up. Just as he starts catching some Z's, mysterious patterns begin to pop up on his chiseled body. By the way, have you noticed that this lazy guy does nothing but game, yet he has one of the best bodies? It's a bit jealous-making. If I could get stronger just by writing manhwa recaps, I'd be the strongest person on the planet. Anyway, after his sleep, he heads to the bath in the morning. As the water pours over his body, he lets out a scream because his skin is shedding. He comes out of the bath, wondering if this is the effect of the short sutra on perfect wisdom circulating in his body. Regardless, he grabs his phone again and checks his stats. To his surprise, his old Lost Immortal Sutra key spell hasn't been replaced. Instead, his constitution has broken the 10 limit and improved to 11. Not only that, he can also feel the short sutra on perfect wisdom circulating through his body. But then he realizes something that completely blows his mind. Apparently, he can replace and circulate his newly acquired chi with the Lost Immortal Sutra. This means he's mastered 2 chi spells at once, which is a huge deal since most chi spells are very different in nature, and it's tough for a person to operate 2 simultaneously. The more advanced and complicated the chi spells, the harder they are to coexist. Just then, his phone starts ringing. It's Haifeng, who reminds him that they've already reached the Lotus Pond to challenge the Lotus Flower and asks why he hasn't arrived yet. Looks like our guy got so caught up in grinding his game that he forgot he had a promise to fulfill. Shortly after, he makes it to the Lotus Pond, where we see that the party has already started attacking the core of the Lotus Flower. And our boy is the one who is calling all the shots, and with his flawless guidance, the team manages to obliterate the blob of goo. Our boy quickly tells everyone to back off at least 20 meters. The beasts start stepping back, but that's when this cocky guy, who seems to be using his backside to think, insists that they should deliver the final deadly move now instead of retreating. This rowdy guy decides to take charge himself and orders his flying beasts to launch their blood-blade rain. The birds throw their feathers, which begin to demolish the area. A giant explosion rocks the entire area, and one bird gets caught in the explosion and gets burned to smithereens. The cocky guy is left silent after making this blunder. Our boy makes it clear that he won't be compensating for the loss of the bird because the guy didn't listen to him. The cap guy apologizes and admits his mistake, saying there's no need for him to pay for it. Once the lotus flower is finally reduced to debris and dust, we see two teachers standing near the entrance of the tunnel. The blonde teacher feels quite jealous that someone like our boy will be her student. The woman with glasses comments that our boy gives the impression that he somehow knew the Buddha Heart Lotus would explode at the last moment. To defeat the Buddha Heart Lotus in the military department of the Western District, 5 legendary creatures had to be sacrificed. The blonde then reminds her that since he has a relationship with the Ang family, it's safe to assume that he might have gotten the information from them. The lady responds that Ang Jing and her brother don't like Joe very much, so they wouldn't just hand over information without a good reason. This makes her even more curious about him, and she wants to learn more. We're back in the game, inside the dungeon under the lotus pond. The toad has been activated, and it's spitting out those black gooey balls. But our boy's winged mosquito is dodging them left and right and takes the toad out with a wing attack. To finish the job, the mosquito unleashes its magic light sting. Just like before, it erupts in a heavy explosion, and our guy is pretty chuffed to see that with his knowledge of the lotus's attack patterns and the mosquito's abilities, he can take down the boss quite easily. Suddenly his phone rings, and he sees that there's a new loot drop, which is a symbiotic egg of the blood-striped Buddha Heart Lotus. He picks it up and learns that it's an alchemy-level egg with pretty good attributes. However, he also finds out that while the real Lotus knows several QE fighting skills, this one is too weak and only has one skill. Since there's a risk in hatching the egg, and he doesn't want to end up with a larva Buddha Heart Lotus, he considers fusing it instead. But the fusion rate is abysmal. That's when another system window grabs his attention, suggesting that he simply feed the egg to the silver-winged mosquito. Our boy remembers that the last time he fed his monster a legendary egg, it grew up. So he wonders if the same will happen again. With that in mind, he presses the feed button, but nothing particularly happens. It looks like he might have just wasted a legendary egg, and he's left with no clue about what exactly he needs to do to grow this critter. In the next scene, we see his avatar running towards the small Buddhist temple. As he nears the door, he quickly switches his QE spell to the Short Wisdom Sutra, and feels pretty chuffed to see that circulating the sutra is working perfectly. Once inside, he spots the Buddha statue again. Suddenly, something begins to drip from the statue, and a magical enchantment starts to shimmer right under his blood avatar. He's worried he might have triggered another instant kill trap. To his surprise, nothing happens to him. Instead, a bunch of blobs starts to surround him. When he takes a closer look, he realizes they're actually symbiotic eggs. A system window pops up displaying some odd text. According to the postscript, the Buddha statue is one of the 5 kings of knowledge in Buddhism, who have conquered the 3 worlds of desire, form, and formlessness, and he is offered an egg by the Buddha. Our boy finds it pretty strange that this statue is trying to give him free symbiotic eggs. When he tries to check the stats of the egg, the system window says that the attributes can't be accessed because they're unknown. So, he decides to pick one of the 3 eggs at random. As soon as he makes his choice, the system announces that the mythical creature hatching is confirmed. Our boy gets absolutely furious and throws his phone away because he never confirmed anything. It's not that he doesn't want a mythical creature. In fact, they're very powerful in the dimensional realm. The problem is that even legendary creatures nearly killed him during hatching, so he's dreading the pain that's about to come with a mythical creature. But since the hatching has already been confirmed, the arc of pain begins. This red-black substance starts to choke him, and he really doesn't want to be the first guy to die from playing games. A while later, we see him sprawled on the ground, looking like he's just gone through post-nut clarity after jacking off to some anime girls. He's pretty weird out that he's still alive despite the mythical creature hatching. He can also feel that his blood and chi have drained from his body. I guess it was worth it though, since I highly doubt he would have gotten a fluffy and cute furball like this otherwise. The creature is named Dieting. He's confused at first because a mythical creature is supposed to be a powerhouse capable of destroying everything. But this little fella doesn't seem to fit that description. He picks up his phone and checks the creature's stats. Well, here's the bad news. The system mentions that this creature is an ordinary one at its primary stage. What shocks him most is that this ordinary creature has all attributes in the 2-digit range, which seems far from ordinary. It's hard to believe this could be considered ordinary at all. Still, he was told it was a mythical creature, and now he feels like he's been scammed by this crappy system. Nonetheless, he starts pondering the system's mention of the primary stage, and wonders if this monster can grow like the silver-winged mosquito. In myths, the white dog of Bodhisattva Ksitigarbha could hear everything in heaven and earth, and in Journey to the West, Dieting could differentiate the real Monkey King from the 6-eared macaque, while many other gods couldn't. This little creature, however, looks quite different from what he had expected. He then decides to check out the creature's symbiotic form. The little creature transforms into an ear-piercing ring. As soon as the effects of the ring are activated, he can feel and hear his surroundings more acutely. He can even hear people outside his dorm room. That's when he catches the voice of Jiang, who seems to be groaning intensely, making him suspect she might be having a blast with her middle fingers. He even feels like a pervert for eavesdropping on girls and decides to tune out and refocus. Still, her groans are getting more intense and she seems to be in real distress. He quickly reaches her dorm room and starts banging on the door, asking if she's okay. When he doesn't get a response, he starts to worry that something might have happened to her. Determined to rescue her, he takes a few steps back and charges at the door like a bull. However, he still can't get inside, because this is Ang Jiang's room, and her security door is built like a tank. Meanwhile, Jiang, lying on the ground, is puzzled about how he can even hear her. She definitely doesn't want him to see her in the awful state she's in right now. Before he can actually tear through the door, Jiang quickly tells him to stop. The thumping at the door suddenly stops, but our guy, ever the champ, decides to jump through the window, leaving her completely boggled. As soon as he's inside, he asks if she's okay. Jiang is utterly embarrassed to see him and asks, "How on earth did you get in through the window?" Our clueless hero replies that he thought she was in danger because no one answered the door. He adds that he prefers calling a doctor if she's hurt. The girl quickly gets terrified and assures him she's been through this many times before and it'll be fine soon enough. That is when this idiot asks her outright if she's having her period. She glares at him like he's the dumbest person alive, throws down a mug over his face, and reluctantly confirms that yes, she's having her period. Then she drags him out of the room and slams the door shut. Looks like our guy completely misread the situation. Meanwhile, inside the room, she leans against the door, sliding down to the ground, feeling utterly embarrassed and blushing like crazy after the awkward encounter. The boy returns to his dorm room and starts preparing food, specifically choosing red dates to help him recover sooner. His phone begins buzzing, and when he picks it up, it's Xuan on the other end. The playboy informs him that the new semester starts today, and that every club is looking for new members, so he suggests taking a stroll around campus to explore and get acquainted with others. However, the boy states that he's not interested in joining any clubs. Xuan responds that they could work together, and he's planning to start his own club. He even promises to help our boy with climbing up the ranks if he joins his club. But as we all know, my guy can easily climb the ranks just by playing video games, so he refuses and lets his friend know he's not interested. Xuan then tells him not to be so cold, reminding him that they need teams to complete most of the tasks assigned by the college. He points out that no one wanted to team up with them during the real combat test, and asks if he wants to face that situation again. I guess our playboy got a point, so Joe eventually gives in, and reminds his friend that the two of them alone aren't enough to start a club. Xuan just says they'll figure it out later. With that, the scene takes us to the outside, where the students start gathering in the central square of the college, and our boy feels overwhelmed by the crowd. Among the sea of people, Xuan is standing on the stairs, calling out to him, and he's accompanied by a lady. When they meet up, the playboy quickly asks why he's carrying a bag. Our boy explains he's got red dates and wolfberry tea to help replenish his blood. That's when the lady chimes in, suggesting that since he's already here, he should join Wei Yang's club. She adds that they have many lovely girls and would be happy to have him join. By the way, Wei Yang is Xuan's sister, which is exactly why Xuan protests, saying that our boy will be joining his club instead. He asks his sister if she's trying to lure him in with a bunch of beauties, making it clear that they're not falling for it. Despite his words, it's obvious from the way our playboy is drooling that he's definitely tempted. Our boy admits that he can't join Wei Yang's club, not because he's not interested in clapping some cheeks, but because he's already promised Xuan he'd join his club. Wei Yang's lovely sister gives up and says she's looking forward to cooperating with Xuan's club if the need arises. This pervert brother just gives a pleasant thumbs up to his sister, but our boy just stands there in silence. Once the ladies have left, Xuan jokes about how our boy let a group of lovely ladies slip away. Joe tells him to stop joking and get serious, asking if Xuan isn't really committed to starting the new club. He warns that they need to start recruiting members quickly, or all the freshmen will join other clubs soon. The playboy points out that there's nothing they can do because freshmen have to wait a month before they can apply to establish a club. They also need at least 5 members, and right now they're not qualified to start a club yet. Annoyed, Joe asks what the heck they're even doing here if they can't establish a club. Xuan proudly replies that they're here to check out the girls, of course. This just irritates our boy even more, realizing he missed out on joining a club with a group of girls just so he could help Xuan establish his club. But then, a familiar voice calls out to our boy. Hearing this, Joe turns around, only to see 2 of his former friends standing before him. He wasn't expecting to run into them here, and he finds it rather fascinating that they all ended up at Sunset College again. Xuan nearly jumps out of his skin when he sees a hottie in shorts and quickly asks our boy who this bombshell is. Xu introduces her as Feng Ruxi, and mentions that they used to go to the same high school. The playboy then creeps over to Joe and whispers, asking how he could have missed the chance to meet her back then if they were in the same school. But even if he missed the chance back then, Xuan is glad to meet someone like Ruxi now. He quickly invites her to join his club, asking if she'd be interested. To the Playboy's surprise, Ruxi agrees right away. That's when this idiot remembers to tell her that they can only officially apply to start the club a month later, so she might have to wait a bit for things to happen. The girl agrees to wait for their club and then walks over to Joe. She bows in front of him and apologizes, saying she's really sorry for leaving him out of the team during the college entrance exam, which might have caused him to miss his chance. Xuan watches with interest, wondering if she joined Sunset College just because of Joe. On the other hand, Joe forgives her, saying it wasn't entirely her fault. The blonde guy also awkwardly jumps in, saying they had no choice back then but promises it won't happen again. The Playboy then tells everyone to chill and skip the formalities since they're all buddies. He suggests it's getting late, so they should head back and get some rest to gear up for tomorrow's combat test. Ju is a bit surprised to hear this, and asks if they really have to dive into a combat test on their first day of college. He wonders if they're heading to Buddha City for it. Xuan clears it up, saying they're not going to Buddha City because this place is a newly discovered with tons of hidden dangers, and the college isn't about to let freshmen take those risks. Ruxi then explains that, based on past years' experiences, the college usually picks one of the 4 stable dimensional realms for the test.